Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to another MSI Insider live stream. As you can see, I'm not alone. I'm here together with the one and only Ruud.
That's me.
So then you know we're going to talk about something technical, right?
Yeah, should be.
And Ruud will not be our only guest for today, because in a couple of minutes we will be joined by Mike from Kingston, and he knows all about the latest and greatest in the world of DDR5 memory. Because that's our topic for today. He will also talk about a very new product line they have. You can already see it behind us with some very cool RGB lighting. It's also the modules that are currently on our testing bench here on the table. But before we go into all that, we also have a giveaway today, so you'll be able to win a game code for Rainbow Six Extraction. To participate, go to msi.com/2/insider, or if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, you can also follow the direct link that our bot will put in the chat once every 5 minutes. That will redirect you to Gleam. Within Gleam, you can perform certain actions. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you'll have to win. And also, if you're a returning visitor, make sure to claim your loyalty bonus as well for a slight edge in the giveaway. If you have any questions to us or later on also to Mike from Kingston, make sure to drop them in chat and we'll try to answer as many as possible. First, we're going to talk a little bit about these new Kingston modules. Mike will tell us more about DDR5 in general, and later on we will have some cool demonstrations with this new memory. Some gaming demonstrations, some productivity demonstrations, and if you can think of something else and we have it available, then we can also freewheel a bit. And show you some stuff that you may be curious about in relation to DDR5, of course. So yeah, to start it off, let's get our guest in. So let me grab my earpiece so I can also hear him. Hello, Mike. Can you hear us? Hey. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning
so, Mike,
from SoCal.
Yeah, you're in the US. So what time is it for you now?
It is just after 7 a.m. here in California.
Ooh, so very early morning for you. Thank you so much for joining today and for waking up very early for us today. And
My
mostly
pleasure.
for the chat, of course, and for the viewers. Maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit. How long have you been within Kingston? What do you do within Kingston? And anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Mike Money. I'm a DRAM technology manager with Kingston. I've been with the Kingston family for 26 years, so lots of time to absorb everything and anything about memory technology, as well as other Kingston product specialties. And my main focus is to understand all aspects of technology with memory, overclocking, standard from PC all the way to server, and staying in close sync with Intel and AMD on their platforms, their capabilities, and then working with our motherboard partners like MSI to make sure we fit nicely into the boards and we sell products together.
So 26 years. We can basically call you Mr. Kingston.
Yeah, not that long, but yeah, long time.
Nice. So you're also mentioning you're working both on the consumer side, but also server side. Have you been doing that for all those 26 years, or have you also had certain different jobs within Kingston maybe before?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kingston's one of those companies where you can come in as maybe a receptionist and work your way all the way up to an executive. My specialty started in sales, and I worked my way through compliance and marketing, and eventually got into the engineering side, where I was working with product engineering, working on our databases, getting familiar with how to support systems, and understanding all the different models and offerings from everything from the motherboard builders to the big OEMs. And then I graduated to become part of the technical team that trains and explains the technology. So I would travel around the world and speak and get customers familiar with Kingston's product lineup and how it works and how to get the best out of their PCs, their laptops, or their servers using our products.
So you know the company in and out with all those different roles.
Pretty well, yeah.
Nice, nice. And you've got something very cool to show us today because you're launching a new memory line.
We are, yes. We have our new Kingston Fury Beast DDR5 RGB modules. And I brought some slides to give you a little bit of a summary of what that is, as well as a few other technical tidbits I'd love to share.
Yeah, so you already had your Fury Beast DDR5 memory modules. They were basically as soon as Intel Alder Lake launched, of course, the first platform supporting DDR5.
Yes.
That's when you also launched the first series of Fury Beast modules, but those were still completely black.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
these have got some cool RGB, so more FPS, right?
Absolutely. More, well, come on, you got to style your rigs, right? And we're glad to finally have our RGBs ready to go. Yeah, so we did launch last year our DDR5 offerings under the Kingston Fury Beast family, and that was in sync with the Z690 launch or Alder Lake. And we partnered with MSI to help support the launch. So our modules were going out with MSI boards to reviewers and customers. We're very excited about that. And we spent our focus because of the supply shortage on DRAM and other components needed for DDR5. We had a really focused launch to make sure we had enough memory out there for our global customers to get some. And since then, we've been working on adding speeds, we added capacities, and then, of course, finally our RGB offerings.
Cool. So let's maybe take a little bit of a more detailed look at the new series that you're launching. So you've got all different kinds of speeds, all different kinds of sizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if you take a look here, so as we point out on the slides, we are basically mirroring the capacities that we offered with our standard Fury Beast DDR5. So we have 8, 16, and 32 gigabyte capacities. We have dual channel kits of 16, 32, and 64. Fury Beast is our family for kind of entry level, good price point, good performance, good latencies. And we start off at 4800 with better latencies than industry standard timings. We then have 5200, 5600, and 6000 to round that out. All with voltages starting at 1.1, and then with XMP support 1.25 and 1.35 volts. And on the next slide, you can see a little bit more about Intel XMP 3.0.
And this is quite a big difference, right, comparing to DDR4?
Yeah. So Intel made a number of changes to the spec for DDR5. So XMP 3.0 adds more profiles. So if you recall, with DDR3 and DDR4, we were limited to 2 profiles plus the industry standard timings, what we call the JEDEC timings. And so Intel now allows up to 5 profiles to be put onto the module themselves. So we start off with the default JEDEC speeds, and if you're not familiar with that term, that's the Joint Electron Device Engineering Council, a little bit of a mouthful. That's the industry standards body where all the memory companies sit together and come up with the standards for memory technology.
So basically, if you build a computer, you put your modules in, and you don't make any adjustment in the BIOS, that is the speed you will get, right?
Yeah, that's industry standards. And we have a different product line at Kingston for that. We call that Value RAM. And so if you're not worrying about overclocking, you would buy the Value RAM module, and it's industry standard spec and timings, and it's going to work.
Just basic plug and play and go.
Basically, yeah. Plug and play is a little different technology for how we define that at Kingston. Plug and play for Kingston is a way of overclocking without having to change any timings. And so what we do is we actually send the modules out from the factory at lower latencies, but using standard speed and voltage. And this is a nice way for users to just plug the module in, not have to mess around with changing the profiles if they don't have access to maybe those profiles. So a good example for that is we created this technology in the mid-2000s, and this was a way to be able to provide users with maybe HP or Dell systems to be able to get a little more performance with an overclock memory module, when they weren't able to get into the BIOS and make those changes, right? They
So
couldn't
even
set a
if you had a
profile.
fully locked BIOS from a pre-built system, maybe even a
Yeah.
quite basic system, you
Yep.
could still get more performance out of your memory.
Absolutely. And so we continue that tradition with the Kingston Fury Beast DDR5 family. So you can, at 4800, it's considered plug and play. And then for any of the faster speeds, you would use, of course, the XMP profile. So profile one's going to be what we advertise as the kit speed. So 5200 or 5600 with the lower latencies. If your system's not stable with profile one engaged, you can then go in and set profile two. So that would be a step down in speed and less aggressive timings. Or if that's not stable, you can go down to profile three for even slower speed. And that's a good way to figure out maybe if your board's not stable, is it the memory that's a little too fast? Maybe the board can't keep up with it. Then you can change those profiles. Now, profiles 4 and 5 are user programmable. And so there's a component on the module called the PMIC. Our PMIC allows for users to go in and set their own speed and timings and voltage and then save it on the module itself.
So
This is
also if you
something
take the module to a different system, you still have that profile on your module itself.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a real interesting concept. You used to be able to do this maybe within the BIOS itself, where you could save a profile or save some settings in the
But then you would
BIOS.
always save it to the motherboard. It's completely new that you can now save it to your specific memory module yourself, other than the preset XMP profiles that you, for example, had with DDR4.
Yeah, that's the idea. So pretty cool technology from Intel for that new spec. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about some features that are exclusive to Kingston with our RGB product lineup. This one is called IR Sync. And IR Sync is it's a hardware solution to a problem that our engineers recognize with studying our competitors' RGB modules. And one thing they noticed was that many of our competitor modules would lose sync over time. So the patterns of the individual modules might fall out of sync and not be perfect in the way that they were displaying the pattern.
So basically,
so,
you're seeing something different in the first memory module than what you're seeing in the second.
Correct. And we saw this across many of our competitors, and we thought, well, what can we do that's different or better? And our engineers began using IR sensors on the modules themselves. And so if you see the little pictures I have there, you can see on the top where we've got a playing card, and you can put the playing card between the memory modules.
So basically, you're blocking the sensor?
Yeah, you block the IR sensor, and then the modules go out of sync. So you can see a little example there where I show competitor modules that were going out of sync, and the Kingston Fury modules were staying in sync. So just kind of a different way we do things. We try to kind of solve problems, come up with solutions, and kind of show off our capabilities.
Cool.
Is this also on the modules we got here today?
Yes. Yeah,
I haven't
absolutely.
noticed.
Well, we should try later on.
Actually,
You should
they're
try that. It's
still,
kind of fun to
perfectly in
put a little
sync.
business card or a playing card in there and block it.
Nice.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I also see a comment in chat. The Gaming Stuff TV is saying, usually you need to restart to fix the RGB out of sync.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's indeed when you don't have a sensor, the only way to get them back in sync is to restart your whole system. But then at a certain point, you of course risk that they're out of sync again.
Or switch the RGB effect to a different one, and then go back to the one you want.
That could also work indeed.
That also
You
resyncs.
could. Yeah, but I mean, who wants to go and do that, right?
No,
we have
this
seen
is much
some.
better.
Yeah, we've seen some of the competitors try to do it with software as well, and maybe that works well with their modules. But we found our hardware version keeps it perfect every time.
I see a question from James Madison in chat. What do you mean by Intel XMP 3.0 ready? Is it Intel only?
Yes. So Intel. XMP is Intel's overclock spec. And so they actually write a spec for memory module manufacturers and motherboard companies to follow. And this basically provides the industry with a recognizable way to work together on overclock. Prior to Intel XMP or AMD's AMP and RAMP and other names that they've had for their program, going back to maybe the early 90s, the early 2000s, we didn't have these standards, and so overclocking was kind of like the Wild West, right? It was done kind of by tuning the knobs in the BIOS, and you were always at risk of making your system unstable.
Setting all the
And
timings manually.
yeah, and what was funny is Intel and AMD were very much against this concept in the beginning because they didn't want you overclocking and risking damaging, right, their processors or the chipsets. And they finally recognized that, wow, this is a segment we should pay attention to, and maybe if we put a standard behind it, we can all get together and make it safe for users. And so that's what XMP is.
But just to avoid any confusion, like that they support XMP 3.0 does not mean that AMD, for example, announced that they will also support DDR5 on their upcoming platform together with AM5. It doesn't mean that because they support XMP 3.0 that they do not support those AMD platforms, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer that I can share on that just yet. We do work very closely with AMD, and we're looking forward to the AM5 platform. It's been announced, right? Very exciting. I think there's some more announcements coming that will address that question regarding their overclock methodology. So we're looking forward to announcing ours with them.
But also with AMD, you will of course also extensively test those, but it's still a bit too early to say because the platform is not on the market yet. So it could be that, for example, if these are tested fine, that you could also use these modules in an AMD system, for example.
That remains to be seen.
Yeah,
So
after
we will
testing,
see.
of course, if they test fine
Well,
for that.
yeah, yeah. So I can't talk. I'm under NDA, so I can't share too
Yeah,
many
we can also
details.
not give too many details, of course.
Yeah.
But this is also something that we're testing as well, of course. As soon as
Hmm.
we launch our AM5 motherboards, we also have our QVL, the qualified vendor list. So all these
Hmm.
modules are already in our headquarters. And
Hmm.
within our headquarters, also, they will put these modules on those boards to see if they work fine. So this is, of
Hmm.
course, something that will be tested later on.
Yes.
Skeets is saying in chat, I expect these to work flawlessly with AM5 as they will have months to test them. Yeah, it's about more than testing. It's also based on settings maybe. Maybe you need to use specific settings. That's all too early to tell for AM5 basically.
Hmm.
Dushan is asking a little bit about the future. Does Kingston have any plans to release any new DDR5 RAM module series?
We do, absolutely. So as I get into a few slides ahead, we have other product line we call Renegade, and Renegade is our high-end overclock
I'm quickly going to
solution.
your overview slide with all the
Yeah,
DDR5, DDR4, DDR3.
yeah. Let's we can skip ahead to that one if you like. Um, on that particular slide, that shows the whole family of products that we currently offer, all the way back to DDR3. And as you see for the DDR4 family, we have two full DIMM solutions, or long DIMM solutions. We have Beast, the entry level, and then we have Renegade, which is the high end. So Renegade's going to offer the fastest speeds, and it's going to offer the lower latencies. And this is usually the product line that the extreme overclockers are going to use to set world records. So we are working on a Renegade solution for DDR5, but we're just not ready to announce it yet.
So your Beast series is more like competitive pricing and maybe some
Hmm.
nice additional features like with the RGB version. And Renegade
Hmm.
is really the top end line. If you want to go basically the fastest you can go, want to do extreme overclocking, then that's the way to go.
That's it. You got it.
I see another question in chat by Pan Kai Ko is asking what happened if 4 out of the 2 RAM slots, I think he means 2 out of the 4 RAM slots, are filled with HyperX Predator, 16 gigabytes, 2933, 8+8. Now I want to upgrade to 32 gigabyte, but I can't
Hmm.
find a 2933 kit, so I have to use a 3200 RAM kit.
Hmm.
With the same brand, does it work together flawlessly? Is basically the question, I think.
That's a very good question, and that's pretty controversial because the memory modules themselves are designed to clock down to the lowest speed to stay in synchronization.
So if you would
And
combine, for example, the 2933 with a 3200, then you would run all
Mhm.
4 at 2933.
Correct. But that's not something we like to recommend.
Hmm.
So we want to make sure that you're consistent with your kits, that you're using the same part number, and so that we can guarantee that you're going to have a nice, smooth, stable experience with your overclock.
Because apart from the speeds, there can also be other differences, right? Maybe the voltages can be different, the timings can be different.
Hmm. Right, and if you're setting those, of course, using an XMP profile, and so which profile are is the BIOS going to pick up, and are you
Hmm.
going to set, and how does it apply to all the modules themselves? So theoretically, it should work, right? It should recognize the modules in the first bank, and apply the settings, the 2933 latency and timings, and then apply it to the rest of the modules. But it's not something we like to recommend. We want you guys to have a nice, smooth, easy experience. So in that situation, I would probably replace them with a kit of 4, where it's all the correct timings, it's all the correct, the same build, the same components on the memory modules.
Hmm.
It's when you get into the extreme speeds that really makes a difference. Having the same DRAM chips, the same type of PCB, is important to keep things in perfect timing.
So basically, what you're recommending is try to, like, preferably have identical modules, but if not possible, at least make sure that they're as close as possible to each other in terms of speed, timings, voltage.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We're stepping into the unknown because nobody has tested that specific
Combination, yeah,
yet.
because
So
there is
you're
an
the first
infinite
one to
number
do
of
it.
combinations possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is where I play very safe, because I'm a voice of Kingston, right? So, when we make recommendations, on part numbers, for somebody building a new system, right? I'm going to tell them, go look. You can look at our website and see what parts we recommend for the MSI board, or better yet, go look at the QVL, the qualified vendor list for that specific board, and you can see which part numbers MSI has qualified from Kingston's product lineup.
So they have actually been tested on that board.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And you can see in what configuration. And this is particularly important with DDR5. DDR5 has limitations. The chipset has limitations in terms of how many modules you can plug in and at what speeds are safe and stable. And that information is available on the MSI QVLs.
I see another question in chat by Indiana Roy is asking, will 4000 megatransfer per second DDR4 become more common with DDR5 in the market?
So we have that as part of our product solution. We have 4000 speed, and so the last Intel chipset to support that was the 590. Supported it. It was pretty easy and stable. Ryzen supported it very, very nicely on some of the higher end boards as well. But yeah, in order for us to move forward with a new technology, right, we had to move on to DDR5. And that opens up a whole new potential for faster speeds and lower timings and other new technology features.
Because at a certain point, you're just basically running into the limitations of DDR4. So you're reaching the ceiling basically of what the technology can do.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that because we have DDR5 that we now get DDR4 speeds that are suddenly way higher than we're used to with DDR4.
Right. So DDR4 is it's gonna end where it ends, right? I mean, we got lucky to be the module featured for the last record set for DDR4. And that record has stood up for over a year. So I think most people are kind of moving on to the next generation with DDR5. We know that the AM5 boards, those are DDR5 based. So
you're also shifting focus basically in your product development.
Yes, yeah. We will have some refreshes on our DDR4 product line, so we're not, of course, abandoning it. There's a huge market for DDR4 still. We expect the DDR4 landscape to continue to be a global best-selling product. So we probably will not introduce new speeds, however. So it'll be kind of like our DDR3 product lineup, where we still have it, but the full range of speeds that we once offered have been narrowed down as there's fewer and fewer boards on the market being sold as DDR3.
So people will still be able to buy DDR4 in the future, but they shouldn't expect, for example, DDR4 6000 or anything like that.
No, yeah, I think we've hit the limits of what the last generation DDR4 boards can do.
Okay, I see another question from Draugan TV is asking, how long for a 7000 CL32 kit? That's very specific.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. I'm very excited about the potential for DDR5 and where we can go with it. In fact, recently our module was used by, on an MSI board to set the record. We were the first to go over 10,000 megatransfers. So pretty exciting stuff. The record didn't hold too long. Somebody did break it, but we're going to see if we can't break that again.
It's a continuous game, right, of breaking those records.
Yeah, and it's really fun to do that. We're, of course, always going to be limited by the silicon, right? So what can the DRAM chips themselves do? And because DDR5 is brand new, we're just in the first generation of DDR5. And we have 3 different big vendors that we work with. We have Hynix, Micron, and Samsung. They all have different die masks and different revisions of DRAM. And so we're sampling and we're binning and we're seeing what can we do with the technology. And it's not just that. It's what can we do with the chips in mass production? What can we do to support, thousands and thousands of kits from our production lines to support our global customers, right? And not just a kind of a one-off little press release SKU. So 7,000, I think it's a little ways off. I would say maybe next year before it's a viable SKU that you can buy from our website or our partners.
And also specifically like the combination of CL32, which is like for DDR5 extremely low, in combination with an extremely high frequency of 7,000. That will still take some time, right?
Yeah. So we're pretty excited about. I'm not ready to spill any beans on our Renegade DDR5 coming, but we're hitting some pretty aggressive timings with that one. So we've seen what our competitors have done and what they put out, and I think we're going to one up them.
So that's something to look forward to, the Predators.
Yeah, and we have a whole new generation of DRAM for DDR5 coming that we're playing around with, and it's looking good. So.
Nice. Let me quickly skip back a few slides because we skipped a few. For example, your Fury Control software. Can you maybe tell a little bit about that?
I would love to. Fury Control is our new software for customizing the lighting pattern of the modules. And so this picks up where we last left off with the old version called Ingenuity. And that was a HyperX product. Now we've developed our own kind of tool called Fury Control, and it's recently been updated to version 2.0 to support our new DDR5 RGB beast modules. And there's a bunch of really cool features that we've added to that. So looking at the next slide, you can actually see what the new user interface looks like. We've added up to 16 built-in patterns for this, so up from 8 for DDR4. And we've added individual LED customization. You can also desynchronize the modules, have them be different colors, and each LED be a different color. And then you can toggle the speeds and timings of those. So lots of customization features available, lots of ways to optimize and make it look good in your rig.
And it's not limited to just the modules, because your modules are also part of, for example, the MSI Mystic Light ecosystem. Later on, we'll also demonstrate it a bit. So these modules can work together with our Mystic Light software, and that way you can also sync it with other RGB components. So for example, if you have an MSI motherboard, MSI liquid cooler we're using today with RGB lighting, you can sync all together and have them work together as well, even though it's multiple brands that you're using. Yeah,
very excited to see that.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I see another question in chat. The Gaming Stuff TV is asking, question, I have a Kingston Predator kit from 2015, still using it right now. Should I be concerned about the kit's age? It's working flawlessly. Never had a memory module die because of age so far. Do they just go out without warning?
No, not usually. Memory has a pretty long life on it. They don't have endurance issues like you would have on a NAND type component where you could wear them out. Memory is going to keep on going. I have memory modules in my lab going back to the late 90s that are still functional. So,
So it's not,
yeah,
hey, the life expectancy is, for example, 6 years, and then
no,
they have a risk of dying anytime soon.
no, no. Memory modules, when they die, when they go bad, it's usually induced by something. So, there could be susceptibilities in the silicon. They could have ESD damage or physical damage. That's usually what happens. So when they come back to us and we do kind of analysis of what might have happened in the field, that's usually what we find.
Or maybe overclocking, if you put extreme voltages at it, then
Yeah, that happens too. Yeah, so be careful, right? We can see when that happens. We know if you overjuice the module and fried it out. Yeah, not good.
But yeah, in
So what's the
general,
safe
if
Warranty doesn't cover
voltage
that.
if the
What's
kit
safe
is running
voltage for the
stable
beast?
since 2015, then that person shouldn't be worried, right? It can
Not at all.
still continue for much longer in theory.
Absolutely.
At a
And that's
certain
what that
point, you may
lifetime
want to
warranty is
upgrade, of
for.
course, but yeah, that's a different
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
So just for my knowledge, what's the safe voltage for the DDR5 modules, the 6000 kit I have?
I believe ours are 1.35 volts.
Okay, so if I go up, say hypothetically, I've put on 1.45 volts.
That's not hypothetically. You will test
Yeah,
that.
no, I already did.
Everyone knows
Yeah.
it.
But just briefly,
Yeah.
it's still working
Yeah.
fine. So.
Yeah. So you're not going to get any manual tuning advice from me because I'm not allowed to.
Ah,
But,
okay.
Yeah.
So you'll stick with the stock numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So
okay.
just whatever your BIOS will allow is usually what I would say.
Oh, okay. I haven't checked what the maximum was, but
Yeah. I don't think the MSI engineers are going to let you guys fry a CPU. So yeah.
no, well, some voltages are quite high that you're allowed to set, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's not advisable to do so.
No. That's why we make it easy with an XMP profile, right?
Yeah.
It's stay within safe guidelines, and you'll have a nice, smooth, stable experience.
Yeah.
I see Guy Botron is asking in the chat, Kingston Fury 4x16 gigabyte DDR5 unable to hit maximum frequency of 5600 megahertz, only reaches 4800 on the Z690 Carbon. Any plans to fix this in BIOS? The thing is, we're always working together, for example, with Kingston to optimize our BIOS further to get better and better memory support. But there is more to it than only the memory module and the motherboard. Of course, this also concerns the memory controller within the CPU is also a factor in this. So especially if you're running 4 modules, that will be way harder on your memory controller than running only 2 modules. So of course we try to improve this as much as possible with BIOS updates, but it's best always to check the QVL because there they also test in different configurations. So test it with 1 module, with 2 modules, with 4 modules, and there you can already see what kind of module would reach what kind of speed when putting in 4 modules. So yeah, it is something we're always working on. But if you use all 4 modules, it is definitely possible that you will need to go to a lower memory speed than, for example, what the kit would be able to do if you're only using 2 DIMM instead of 4 DIMM.
I think that's really key about the difference between Alder Lake and the previous Intel generations. Like the previous ones with DDR4, you could run at 3600 also with 4 memory modules. And with the DDR5 in Alder Lake, that's not really possible. So 5600, that's still way out of range. At least with the current CPU and the current memory kit.
And this can, of course, be different in future CPU generations as well. Maybe those memory controllers are able to reach higher speeds also with more modules. Because DDR5 is, of course, still in its early stages. It's still the first generation that even has DDR5. So support
isn't new because AMD with the DDR4 basically has the same limitations. They also have less speed, or they can only run lower speeds with 4 modules than with 2. And that's DDR4, so Intel was kind of odd in that respect. Or AMD was already ahead of time, you can say that. But it will be interesting to see what AM5 does with the DDR5 kits.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Then let's skip the next one because we've already seen the slide with the DDR5, DDR4, DDR3. Let's take a look at some world records. You already touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the DDR4 world record, we're still standing. We're still waiting to see if anyone's going to try and break that. But that one stands at about 7,200 MTs.
And here you can already see so many big differences. Like 2015, the record was 4351 megatransfer per second. So you can already see what the development of a certain type of memory over time can still bring. So that also means a lot to look forward to for DDR5 in the future.
And the next speed records for DDR5, as I mentioned, we also were the first to be over 10,000. So that was very exciting. And exciting to see that our competitors broke it. So we're looking to see what we can do. We can one-up them and get back in the race. But I think the message from us is that, the past few years, there's been a lot of focus on other products from Kingston. We had the whole keyboard, mice, headset, all that kind of fun stuff with HyperX. And now we're back to focusing on our core expertise, which is memory and flash solutions. And so now that we've got our eyes on the target, and we've got a team of people working on this stuff and not other stuff, we're pretty excited about maybe where we can take Kingston Fury in the future.
Yeah, just for people watching who are maybe a bit confused, HyperX is not part of Kingston anymore, so you're really fully focusing on memory products again, right?
Yeah. So if they may have read the news, we that was a division of Kingston. We started the Kingston HyperX as a memory overclock brand in the early 2000s, and then in around 2013 timeframe, we began introducing keyboards and mice and headsets and other really fun peripherals to round out the gaming ecosystem. And that became a division of Kingston. And then recently we sold that division to HP to round out their gaming portfolio. And it was a strategic move for us to get back to our core expertise and focus back on the things that we're best at. Not that we weren't winning awards with headsets, we were, but now we can focus on memory and our solid state drives and USB drives, and take this to a new level.
Okay.
And so that became a rebrand. So we rebranded it back under Kingston, and we now call it Fury.
So that's also why the modules are not called HyperX anymore, right? Because I remember them, like, I think back in the DDR2 days, you had like the blue heat spreaders, red text on them.
Yeah. So yeah, a few changes to the names. Kingston Fury. Now we brought the name Beast back as our entry level product line. We used to have a HyperX Predator that now has become Kingston Fury Renegade as our bleeding edge product, and then Kingston Fury Impact. That name doesn't change. That's our SODIMM overclock solution.
So specifically for very small form factor systems and notebooks.
Yes, yeah, and that's a fun space too because as we know, there's lots of gaming notebooks out on the market, but there's really there's not an ecosystem necessarily in place for XMP overclocking, and so that's where our plug and play technology really shines because that's the way the memory modules overclock. So you can take those Impact SODIMMs, you can plug them into your Alienware or your Omen. Or your MSI gaming laptop, and they will automatically overclock without having to engage a profile. And what's cool about that is it's standard voltage, so it's not going to be draining the battery anymore. It's not going to be putting out excessive heat and causing any instability.
Cool. I see some people talking about over 10,000 megahertz on DDR5. They say now it's time for liquid cooling for RAM. Well, there have been.
We did it before.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, we did it. We did it before, and there's been some really fun things to watch that our competitors are doing with that. It's got to make sense. I think for DDR4, the heat spreader, once the DRAM components began shrinking to a certain level, they stopped putting out as much heat as they used to. And so heat spreaders up to a certain speed really are kind of cosmetic. Over certain speeds with DDR4, they were useful and still are very useful. But we lost the need to really engineer, liquid cooling solutions. They didn't actually sell very well. But with DDR5, we have some new components on the module that do get pretty hot. And so we are looking into different materials and different technology that might help in that space.
So let's maybe take a look at the differences between those modules. Because
Yeah,
you brought a very nice image that shows what is underneath that heat spreader.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's a little snapshot of our green PCB, right? So the industry standard module. And this was taken from our website. And you can kind of go and take a look at a breakdown of the technology there to get a better understanding of DDR5. But just as you can see in the picture here, there's some new components that are featured on the DDR5 DIMM. That little key, the module key, changes location. So that the notch that we put into the key prevents you from putting it into an incompatible socket. So we have that question of, well, can I plug DDR5 into my Z590 board? No, unfortunately, it won't fit in the socket. That prevents that from happening.
So apart from the technical differences, there is also a physical difference. It simply doesn't fit within the memory DIMM.
Correct. It's the same length module and basically the same thickness, but that key prevents that from locking in. The other new features are we've added a PMIC, which is a power management integrated circuit. And the PMIC used to actually be on the motherboard itself.
It used to be our thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you guys are probably excited to get rid of it. So that's actually going to help us because having the PMIC on the DIMM itself helps us better regulate the flow of power across the module itself.
Yeah, so from a technical standpoint, it makes sense to move this to the memory module.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the flip side of that is, well, it's going to lower the cost on the motherboard, but it raises the cost on the memory module itself. So one of the things that we've heard a lot about is this DDR5 is so expensive. Well, we expect it's going to be more expensive because it's a new technology. But to add to that, there are more chips on the module, and that, of course, is going to be reflected in the cost. Additionally to the PMIC, there's now inductors that are included on the module. Modules always have resistors and capacitors to help with the flow of electricity across the board. And we've had an update to the SPD chip, that's a serial presence detector, EEPROM. It's now called an SPD hub, and that helps with the flow of information across the board and managing it. Now, DDR5 comes out with less power required to operate, so it's only 1.1 volts to operate a standard DIMM versus DDR4's 1.2 volts. And so lowering power gives us less power being drawn from the power supply, less power in a laptop for battery drain, so that's really good. The module itself is also broken down into dual 32-bit sub-channels. So a memory module is always going to be 64 bits wide, the way it talks to the processor and the memory controller. But what the DDR5 module does is it breaks that down into two 32-bit segments, and this helps be more efficient in how the processor is able to access the module. So it doesn't have to access it in full 64-bit chunks. It can access it in two segments, and this is going to help with efficiency.
So basically, can you see it as like two separate lanes for communication?
Something like that, but it's not the same as memory channels when we talk about dual channel and quad channel, where you're actually pairing memory modules themselves. So it's not those would actually double or quadruple the available bandwidth for the processor. This doesn't do that. This is more of an efficiency play, particularly for multi-core processors.
Okay.
The next thing is on-die ECC, and so as the wafer lithography continues to shrink down and get smaller and smaller and smaller, we have to be very careful with how close those transistors get to each other, and things that could cause errors, right? And we see this a lot on the SSD side, where we have to have ECC, the error correction algorithm, present to fix bad bits that happen naturally. So now the DRAM chips themselves have this ECC built into the chip. And so it's going out and it's looking for potential bit flips and correcting those on the fly. So it's not the same as having an ECC class memory module, something that would go on a workstation or a server. This is actually a function of the individual DRAM chips themselves to make them more stable and less prone to errors that might get outside of the chip.
So it's not the same as like when you had a DDR4 ECC memory kit. Technically, that's quite different from what you see on DDR5 now.
That's correct. That's correct. Next thing we have increased banks and burst length. So this is going to help you have more information open on the module at a time for the processor. We're also having improved refresh timings. And we have something called DFE, that's Decision Feedback Equalization. It's a common technology that's used in other types of semiconductor devices. It's introduced now for DDR5, and this helps with signal integrity. So keeping the module information, the channel clean with the data stream. So we're not getting any bad bits, or this is going to help us also with overclocking, right?
Mm-hmm. Quickly, some people are still talking about the overclocking record. They say, but it's 10,000 worked, but very high latency, CPU clock to the minimum LN2. Yeah, like overclocking records, they're not representative to what you will do in your PC. Also, these kind of records, they're always on 2 DIMM motherboards. So for example, the overclocking record that we were just showing, over 10,000, that was on our Unify X motherboard, Z690 Unify X, which is the 2 DIMM version of our Unify motherboard, because having only 2 DIMM slots will give you a better signal integrity for your memory modules and will allow you to go to higher memory speeds. So basically all overclocking records that you will see for DDR5 will always be on 2 DIMM boards.
With 1 DIMM, yeah.
With 1 DIMM, exactly, exactly.
It's
but
it's
yeah,
a race.
also if you have like they're all dual channel boards. So if you have 4 DIMM slots, you will always have to share 2 of those slots on 1 memory channel.
Correct.
But yeah, indeed, overclocking records, always 2 DIMM boards and 1 single module that they're pushing to the maximum.
1 core active.
Yeah, indeed.
1 thread,
Then, you also quickly wanted to explain the difference between, and I see a lot of confusion about this, megahertz and mega transfer per second.
Yes, absolutely. This has been a fun one. So since the early 2000s, actually since the 90s, we've been talking about memory speed using the term megahertz, right? MHz, megahertz. That means million cycles per second. And we haven't changed that in a very long time. However, it has been inaccurate. It's not the right way to describe memory speed. And the reason for that is megahertz means, so it's million cycles per second, and it has to do with the clock on the motherboard. And with synchronous memory, which came out in the late 90s, information was passed on one of the edges of that clock cycle. And so it was in sync with the clock, data gets transferred. And so that was an accurate way of representing how fast the data was moving, right? So if you have a 100 megahertz clock, your data transfer rate is 100 mega transfers per second, and your effective bandwidth is multiplied by 8. So you'd get 800 megabytes per second. When DDR was introduced, DDR stands for double data rate. So what that means is that you have data transferring on both the rising and falling edges of the clock cycle. So twice the amount of information is being transferred per clock cycle. So if you have a base clock of 100 megahertz, your data transfer rate is actually 200 mega transfers per second.
And this always confuses people when, for example, they open CPU-Z and they check, for example, their memory speed, and they're like, hey, I bought 3200 megahertz modules and I put XMP on, and I only see 1600.
Yeah, exactly, because that's the base clock frequency, right? So so by changing the nomenclature, we better describe how fast memory is actually moving, right? How fast the modules are. And this trend started to take place in around maybe 2014 timeframe. We began seeing our semiconductor suppliers updating from megahertz to mega transfers. So it's been something that wanted to do for a while. And when we introduced DDR5, that was the time to do it. And so we began updating all of our data sheets and website and created this campaign to help our customers understand what that means. So for the number, it doesn't change, right? We're still going to say DDR5-4800. But instead of saying 4800 megahertz, it's really 4800 megatransfers per second.
So the easiest way to avoid it is just mention a number.
Yeah, exactly.
So DDR5 6000.
Yeah, there's
for
different
example.
ways of there's different ways of representing memory performance and memory speed. You can say DDR5-4800. You can say 4800 megahertz DDR5, or you can multiply that number times 8, and you get the module bandwidth.
The bandwidth, yeah. I see Leslie in the YouTube chat has a question about the on-die ECC.
Yeah.
Does it mean that DDR5 with on-die ECC is less prone to errors compared to normal DDR4?
I would say that that's a yes. That the on-die ECC is designed to make fewer errors occur within the DRAM itself, catch them within the DRAM, so that it's a more stable module. And this gets particularly important as we get faster and faster and faster, with the DRAM lithography itself getting smaller and smaller. So as we go down into the 1x nanometer lithography from the wafer suppliers, the semiconductors, those transistor gates get so close together that electrons can actually jump from one to the other, and your bits can flip. So one can become a 0 or vice versa. And when that happens, that's when you get bad data. That's when you might get a blue screen, right?
Nurupoga is asking on Twitch chat, on the current slide, is MB in bytes or bits?
Bytes.
It's
Bytes.
bytes. Big B.
Yeah. Big B.
Yeah.
Bytes.
Small b
bytes
is bits,
bit.
big B is bytes. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit is the smallest unit of measurement in computing, so that's the 1 or a 0, right? And a group of those, a group of 8, is a byte, a capital B. And so when we see this, and we often see this when sometimes memory speeds and memory capacities get translated between languages. Sometimes they'll lower the case of the second letter, and it means something different. Right, so we see megabytes or million bytes versus megabits or million bits.
Let me see if we have some more questions before we round it off. So guys, if you still have any questions to Mike, drop them in chat right now.
There was one question, when we're going to see a winner.
A winner?
Yeah.
After our interview with Mike, we will pick
okay.
multiple winners at once for the giveaway. So don't worry.
For the giveaway. Oh.
Cool.
Hypermodel on Twitch that was asking, does DDR5 impact single core performance or only RAM speed?
Single core performance or only RAM speed? Well, DDR5 modules were designed to, the changes that they made to the design were done intentionally for multi-core processors. And so like the dual 32-bit subchannels, breaking the module down, providing larger amounts of information that can be opened at a time, bigger block sizes, faster refreshes. It was designed because processors are adding more and more and more cores. So if I understand the question correctly, that's why.
I think single core performance will benefit more from lower latencies. Usually the programs that benefit from single core performance, like CAD programs or stuff, usually have memory. The bandwidth isn't the most important part, but the latency is.
Okay.
Yeah, later on we also have some comparative benchmarks where you will also see differences in latencies, and you also see what it does on performance in different programs. So later on the stream we'll also address that.
Cool.
Leslie is asking on YouTube chat for DDR5, what is, let me see, the most IMPT latency? Oh, the most important latency. For example, CAS latency, RCD or RP, RAS, which can go up to 102 cycles. So basically, what are the most important latencies for DDR5? which ones to look for?
Yeah, if you're looking at the first number, is the
So the
one
cache
that
latency.
yeah, the first number is usually the one we focus on.
So that hasn't changed since DDR4. Basically, still cache latency is still the important one.
Yeah, cache latency is very important. I think there's a lot that's made about latency and speed of DDR5, right? The introductory latencies, like that we have, like cache latency 38, it's a pretty significant jump over DDR4 where we left off. But it's important to understand that latency isn't the only story, right? Because as you're adding, you're getting faster and faster. The data transfer rates are much higher. Cache latency does have to naturally go up with that. But that's not the full story. There's some good articles out there written about this. There's something that I'm working on as well, that actually talks about the nanosecond delay, right? And what cache latency truly means. So when they see those big numbers, cache latency 40 and stuff on up, it's not
It's all about the combination with the memory speed as well, and the
absolutely
total latency you're getting.
Exactly, and you'll see in the benchmarks as well, how comparing to DDR4, how much DDR5 it provides an improvement in performance.
Yeah, we also have some nanosecond comparisons as well between, for example, running 4800 CL40 compared to 6000 CL40, because in terms of latency, it's not the same.
Correct.
Andre is asking, is there a real benefit for gaming from DDR5 comparing with DDR4? Is it worth to upgrade now, or is DDR4 still relevant?
I think DDR4 is still very relevant. It really depends on, are you ready to adopt the next generation platform, right? It was nice that Intel allowed DDR4 to work on Alder Lake. So we did have boards from MSI that had DDR4 for Alder Lake, and then boards with DDR5 for Alder Lake. And then the question is, well, which one should I get, right? DDR5 being more expensive. There's new features with DDR5, right? So DDR5, as I mentioned, has a lot of new features in terms of improved refreshes and dual 32-bit subchannels. It's a more stable module with the on-die ACC. So those sorts of things are very attractive. But at a certain point, you won't have that choice anymore, right? Because future motherboards like the AM5 from AMD or the next generation from Intel are exclusively DDR5. And so if you want that new processor, you want those new cores, new speeds, you have to go that way. Now, in terms of benefits to gaming, absolutely. We'll see with benchmarks that things do improve. You'll see as you go faster on overclocking, frames per second increase. So if that's something that's particularly important for maybe your first-person shooter game, then you definitely want to invest in that. DDR4, as we mentioned, is really capped. It's going to go as fast as it's going to go, and we're not going to see any faster modules. DDR5 picks up the pace and continues on to that next generation.
Yeah, and I think it's also, right now, of course, DDR4 is the more affordable option. So if you want to get the most cost-effective price performance system, then probably DDR5 would give you a better deal from that perspective. But especially if you choose for DDR5 and if you're going for somewhat faster DDR5 modules, then, for example, if you're upgrading maybe to a different platform, future platforms, of course, AMD, for example, already announced they're going only DDR5. So if you maybe want to upgrade to the new AMD platform and you already have DDR5 modules, you can take them with you. Whereas DDR4 will be harder to combine, of course, with future platforms.
Yeah.
So you know that if you're going to buy a current system with DDR4, you know it will be basically the last resort for your DDR4 modules. So it's also a bit what your upgrade path will be. And that's, of course, always guessing because you don't know what will come out. But what we do know is that DDR5 will continue and that DDR4 at a certain point will come to an end, of course.
Also,
yeah, and on the memory side, on the memory side, it's always a pricing question too, right? Because with new technology, it's going to be more expensive, but over time, price is going to come down. And we usually reach a point of parity where we see DDR4 and DDR5 pricing will be similar for the same capacity. And then we might even see a shift like we saw with DDR3, where DDR4 was less expensive than DDR3. So this will happen. It's a natural cycle. It usually takes a year to 2 years for that transition point to happen. And what we're seeing right now in the market, is, which particularly with all the instability going on in the world, is that prices are finally starting to come down. They had been at a peak for the last few years with short supply on components, making things more expensive. But even now, with inflation going up, we see that the pricing on memory is coming down to more of an affordable level. So,
Because it's already quite a difference compared to when Intel Alder Lake launched. Compared to now, it's already quite a difference in DDR5 pricing, and also availability has been much better nowadays.
Yeah, we didn't really have any availability issues with our DDR5. We were in a really good position with our launch capacity, and as we've grown the product lineup, we have very good inventory, so shouldn't be any issue getting us.
Yeah. I see another question. Rapid Rhino is asking, should I wait to adopt DDR5? I know DDR4 in the beginning was quite a bit slower than its mature state today. I think it's always like that, right? It will develop over time. So in the early days of DDR5, it will of course be slower than maybe 3 years from now. It's a natural thing. You see that with every memory generation. The frequencies will go up, the latencies will go down, at least relative to each other, of course. So
it's usually at those crossover speeds where we see it. So I would say, like, my first benchmarks that I did on DDR5 at 4800 and 5200 were maybe only incrementally faster or equivalent to the last fastest speed from DDR4, or maybe even similar. So there really wasn't necessarily a big play for a performance gain. But now that we've gone to 5600 and 6000, and there's faster kits coming, we see a very big difference in the potential performance.
PC Benchmaster is asking, is DDR5 more stable than quad-channel DDR4? On quad-channel DDR4. I'm not sure if I understand the question. Is DDR5 more stable on quad-channel DDR4?
It means 4 DIMMs DDR5 versus 4 DIMMs on DDR4.
Oh yeah. So that's what we were talking about earlier, as you mentioned that. It's definitely an issue, as you said, and that has nothing to do with the memory modules themselves. It has everything to do with the chipset and the processor and its capabilities. Unfortunately, the Z690 Alder Lake with DDR5 has limitations in terms of how many memory loads it can handle, and so the best options are going to be your single dual channel kit. This is why we have not released a kit of 4 from Kingston Fury, because populating all of the sockets on the board, you can't go very fast, right? The system can't handle the loads, and so it will naturally clock the memory down to a safe speed. So you might, if you bought, say, our 5600 mega transfer kits, and you plug in 2 of those into the system and you fill all 4 sockets, the boards are going to be limited, right? So you have to take a look at the QVL and you'll see maybe they won't operate at faster than 4800 stable.
And depending on the size as well. So if it's
Absolutely.
a 32 gigabyte kit, it might drop back to 4000 even.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah. So rank is very important with the module itself. So we have single rank modules and dual rank modules. It's a little different than the old idea of saying it's single-sided versus double-sided. What a rank is it's a 64-bit data load. And so a single physical memory module can have 2 of them on it. We call that dual rank. Now, when you do that, you're adding more traffic to the highway, so to speak. So adding more memory loads for the processor memory controller to be able to work with, it's not easy to do. And so that's why the performance of the memory module has to drop down in order to stay in sync with the processor.
I see someone asking quad channel Threadripper. I think he meant like 4 DIMM. It's not quad channel
quad
because on Elder Lake it only supports dual channel. So even if you use 4 memory modules, you're still using them in dual channel.
Correct.
Just to clear that up.
Yeah.
Leslie is asking for DDR5. Will motherboards use daisy chain topology or T topology moving forward? It's always an interesting question with several opinions on this as well. But what we see in the market, like especially for the mainstream segment, so for example, the 600 series Intel right now with Elder Lake, people tend to use 2 memory modules way more often than populating all 4 DIMM slots. And especially when people are only using 2 memory modules, daisy chain will allow them to get a higher frequency on those 2 modules than having T topology, memory topology. So I would say, especially for the mainstream platform, my guess would be going forward, but this is still an early guess, that for now we will probably stick to daisy chain. We're doing that on the current generation. We have been doing that on the past generations as well. And it's basically what the market does. If everyone starts to use 4 modules all of a sudden, then T topology could be a more viable option. But as long as the vast majority of people use 2 memory modules in their system, daisy chain is probably the way to go because you can reach higher frequencies. Neuropoga is asking, why is the rank of DDR typically not advertised? It's annoying when buying or shopping for RAM to research what rank it is.
Shouldn't be an issue. For Kingston, we make all that information available on the website. You can go, when you go and select the Kingston Fury product pages, you'll see that you can select single and dual rank module options. You can also click the link to the spec pages for each product, and it's going to describe how the module is configured. And that has to do with the density of the DRAM and the target capacity of the module. So for DDR5, we use 16 gigabit density DRAM, and you can build 8 and 16 gigabyte modules in a single rank. For 32 gigabyte modules, you have to do that in 2 ranks.
Yeah, so if people are wondering, just check the Kingston website and you'll be easily able to find it, right?
Yep.
I think that was it for today, for the questions that I see. So Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Right,
I think you gave us a lot of good insights about DDR5 and what to look for, also going forward a bit, what to expect. I think it really helps that you're 26 years within Kingston, so you've already been around for a couple of memory generations, so you kind of know what to expect.
Yes, that's the gray hair.
But yeah, I think it has been very useful. I think our viewers also appreciate it. I see a lot of people thanking you for answering the questions.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I wish you a very good working day, because I think it's just past 8 a.m. for you, so it's only just starting. Hey Mike, thank you so much.
Thanks guys.
And hope to see you again in a future live stream.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 That was really good, I think. Chat, did you also like it? I see a lot of people thanking Mike.
Yeah. I was
PC
checking the
Benchmark says
website.
useful info. Yeah, I made a promise. I would pick a couple of winners. So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider. You can also follow the direct link that our bot will put in the chat on Twitch and YouTube. That will lead you to Gleam. Within Gleam, you can perform several actions. The more you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win. If you're already signed up for today's giveaway, there's no need to do it again, because we'll do several drawings throughout the stream, but you will be automatically included in the other drawings as well if you didn't win the first time. So let me pick a few winners. Currently drawing. The honor is all yours, Ruud. I will make it a little bit bigger. I see you're wearing your glasses, but still.
I have glasses on, yeah. a Lightning McQueen.
Lightning McQueen, congratulations. You won a game code for Rainbow Six Extraction. And our next winner,
James 1.
also congratulations. You also won a game code. And we have a third one.
I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but Gaius,
I don't know.
That's what I
But congratulations, you also won a game code for Rainbow Six Extraction. So to winners, please keep an eye out on your mailbox, then we will email the code to you in the coming days with some instructions on how to redeem it. And if you didn't win this time, better luck further in the stream, because we will have some more drawings. VRK is asking how many giveaways today. That depends on how you guys behave. If you're all very kind to us, then we may give away more game codes for Rainbow Six. Sticky Yak is saying, Ruud is pretty low volume.
Oh,
Ruud,
sorry.
speak louder.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Maybe I was distracted a little bit.
So maybe time for to put these modules into practice, because today we're actually running these modules on our test bench. Let's maybe quickly summarize what we're using today. So we have our MPG Z690 Carbon Wi-Fi motherboard with an Intel Core i7-12700K CPU. Then we're running these new Kingston Fury Beast RGB memory modules. And we're using the 6000 mega transfers per second version. So we have the box right here. Of course, the modules are on the board.
Box doesn't say much except for the part number. Maybe it's not really readable. Focus, please. Not focusing.
Yeah, it's quite okay. So as you can see, 32 at the end. It means it's a memory kit of two 16 gigabyte modules, dual channel, so 32 gigabytes in total.
Yeah, I'll show you on the screenshot as well.
Let me also pull this up. You see a nice overview of what we're using. Then the liquid cooler is the MPG Core Liquid K360. So that's why you see the 3 fans as well. We specifically picked this version because it also has some nice RGB lighting, so we can sync it up later on with
in front.
Yeah, with the motherboard and the graphics card and also the memory modules. The graphics card we're using is the RTX 3070 Ti Supreme, with of course also some nice RGB lighting, so we can sync everything up. SSD we're using is 2 terabyte Spatium M480, so that's a Gen 4 M.2 SSD, very fast one. What am I missing? Power supply, MPG, a 850 GF, so 850 watts power supply. Yeah. Leslie's asking, may we know the various latency? Yeah, later on we'll show you everything. So let's maybe go to our capture.
Yeah, I'll show you what's inside. Usually I use the HWinfo64 program for that. That's a nice one to have an overview about the CPU and the memory and also the motherboard and the graphics card. Well, now it's the integrated one, but this is the overview of the system. At the moment, it's the memory is running at 4800 mega transfers per second, and the cast latency, that's the first number, that's CL40 at the moment. That's when you drop it in and don't set anything in the BIOS, this is the speed it will run at. So that's what we also call the JDEC speed or the SPD speed, and that's
just a very default speed.
Yeah, it's a default speed. It's just basic speed. It's not really fast, but it's a good starting point to compare. And since I don't have a DDR4 system equivalent to this one, I only have one 12700K. I cannot do a DDR4 versus DDR5 comparison live.
I see some people saying microphone volume is a bit low. I tried to put it a little bit higher.
Is the positioning maybe wrong? Is this better?
Yeah, let us know in chat if it's better.
I can try to speak harder, but yeah, or raise the volume a little bit on the
I tried to increase you a little bit on the mixer, so I hope it works. Edwin K is asking, how many millivolt do you undervolt a Core i7?
Depending on what you want to achieve, but yeah, it also depends on the CPU, by the way. Normally, And I think about around 50 millivolts should be okay. But if you go towards the 100 millivolts, then probably you will get some instabilities.
Yeah, so yeah, it indeed also very much depends on what you want, what the
but
reason is.
You can achieve a lot with undervolting and making sure that the cooling can, it can handle your CPU, especially with the older lakes. I think 12700K is still a tameable beast, but the 12900K or KS is
at a certain point it becomes very hard to
really
cool.
extreme. And hard to handle for any stock water cooling or all-in-one water cooling. Okay, so it's a 1200K. It's a standard one.
Let me quickly remove the logo. There, people can see it.
Oh, okay, yeah, exactly. And it's a Z690 carbon Wi-Fi with the latest beta BIOS from the website. The graphics card is just the regular one. It's a Supreme X. It doesn't say in this picture, but yeah, it's an overclock one. Here it says several timings also on what is possible on these modules. Some prefer to look at the CPU-Z page. We can open that too. Gives a better overview, I would say, of the profiles inside the modules. And here you see the XMP profile 1, 2, and 3. This is what Mike was referring to. And if the 6000 is not capable of running on your system, you can drop it back to profile 2 or even profile 3. You can also see that the XMP profile 1 has a higher voltage standard than the 2 and the 3. So the 3 actually being very close to the JDAC speeds. As you can see, there's JDAC number 8 speeds, so there's 7 more of them. So the standard speed at the moment is 4800 or 2400 megahertz, cast latency 40. So that's a faster spec than this JDAC number 8.
So these are just like the 4 default profiles. So you have the JDAC one, like the really default one, and the XMP profiles. But these are just the 3 of them. And because of XMP 3.0, you can set 2 additional XMP profiles yourself.
Yeah. So looking at the profile 3, it doesn't add too much performance because it's only 4800 cast latency 38. So you will only gain lower latencies or lower timings compared to the SPD timings.
Yeah, but at the same voltage, so still.
Yeah, still, yeah. So very safe.
We've been talking about QVL a couple of times. Let me quickly show you the QVL as well on our website, like where you can find it and get more detail about it. So this is the board we're using today. It's the product page of the MPG Z690 Carbon Wi-Fi. Of course, go to the specific motherboard you're interested in to buy, or maybe the motherboard you have and you want to buy certain memory modules for. Look that motherboard up on our website. And then if you go to support, you see compatibility. There you click memory. And we're using 12th gen Intel Core. And then here you see an overview of all the different memory modules and the different speeds. So let's, for example, look for Kingston. And you see all the different speeds. Let's sort them on speed. So for example, if we go to the highest speed, you can also see on the right that this speed works on single DIMM and on 2 DIMM, but not on the 4 DIMM. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not that if you buy the 6000 megatransfer per second kit, that you can automatically run all 4 modules at that speed. So really closely look at this. You see the SPD, the voltage, etc. it was tested on, whether or not it's single-sided, the size of the module. So let's, for example, look here. These are, well, slower DDR5 modules. And here you see, for example, it also works on 4 DIMM on 4800 megahertz. So yeah, here you can also see the different profiles that were tested. So you get the default XMP profile, you get the memory profile 2, like Mike explained earlier, that is a little bit lower clocked, or for example has slightly higher timings, and profile 3 you can see per profile what is supported. On our Z690 boards, all of these new Kingston Fury Beast RGB modules have already been tested and verified with all of our Z690 motherboards, and we're currently also working on getting everything tested on our B660 DDR5 motherboards. But for a Z690 boards, you can already find information of these new memory modules in the QVL lists of our motherboard product pages. So yeah, make sure to always check out what you can do on a motherboard, what has been tested, what has been verified, to make sure that the combination that you want to use on a specific motherboard works. Django is saying, Mike is Dutch 1,000,000%. That's correct. I think 1,000,000% of me is indeed Dutch.
Nah.
TDub77 is saying 4DIMM can work, but you need to overclock and individually fine-tune the voltage. Of course, it's always a bit of trial and error. These are tested with the default XMP profiles, so profile 1, 2, and 3 in this situation. But it doesn't mean that you cannot go higher than what we tested. Of course, with some manual tuning of the timings of voltages, you may be able to go higher. But that's definitely a trial and error thing, and it also differs per exact module. Like if you have 2 memory kits, it can be that one memory kit will clock slightly higher than the other one. It's never 100% identical. It's also like that with CPUs, for example. One CPU can clock higher, or maybe is able to run certain speeds with a lower voltage than another CPU. Django is asking, how much better is DDR5? Because DDR4 4000 CL18 versus 5000 CL40 doesn't seem much better. We will do a lot of tests today. We'll also show you a little bit of comparison between DDR4 and DDR5, so you will be able to get a clearer picture of what the differences are and the situations in which it really differs in performance. Because of course there are also examples that are not that memory sensitive, that you don't see a big performance difference between DDR4 and DDR5, but there are also examples where you see quite a big difference between DDR4 and DDR5, and sometimes also running DDR5 at a lower frequency, so for example 4800 megahertz compared to 6000 megahertz that the modules that we're using today can do. So let's go back to Ruud's capture.
I was just looking at the same pages as you were. And what I saw on our QVL was that there's almost none, or actually none, on this board for a dual ranked 4DIMM combination. So that means that it's probably need to lower the speed more than we wanted to show on the website.
Yeah.
And that's also what we saw in practice. I had the Fury 5200 kit, and that's the one we used in the previous videos on Z690.
So the non-RGB Fury Beast kit?
So it's quite basic memory, 5200 CL40. And if you run 4 of them, that's the only modules I have, 4 of them or even more. So I tried to run it at 4800, and I believe I also had to raise the voltage a little bit higher than to get it stable in 4 DIMMs. Of course, it also depends on which motherboard you'll be using. So probably the more high-end motherboards will be able to reach higher speeds than the lower-end motherboards, because they have more layers and therefore better signal integrity on the memory signals. Okay, so you want to do memory benchmark first, or?
Yeah, sure.
So this is the AIDA program, which is well known for its cache and memory benchmark. In this case, we're basically interested in the memory speeds. So it says quad channel. Most programs like CPU-Z and AIDA and HWinfo will say it's a quad channel setup, although we're running in dual channel 2DIMM mode. So that's what Mike was referring to, the 32 sub-channels. So that's the benefit of DDR5 over DDR4.
So it's not actually a quad channel memory controller within the CPU?
No. No, but it has 4 sub-channels, so it can benefit from that. And that's why you see some extreme performance gains in certain benchmarks, also in, for example, this AIDA copy test, but also in, I think that's also the reason why, for example, 7-zip benchmark will show incredible speeds in DDR5 over DDR4, even if the DDR4 is a quite high speed module.
Django, please try to keep it in English in the chat, then other people can also comment and they know what you're talking about. I see you're asking which graphics card is on the bench table. It's an RTX 3070 Ti Supreme. And yes, 12700K, 12900K, 5900X are all indeed, like the mainstream platforms of both AMD and Intel all support maximum dual channel. Yeah. If you want more channels than that, you will need to go to high-end desktop platforms. So for Intel,
different sockets.
Different socket indeed, different chipset, and usually those platforms also offer 8 DIMM slots, for example, so you can also reach higher memory capacities.
Yeah, but those are becoming rare. More rare. So usually we're looking at the latency part and the copy speed, because that's a combination of the read and the write speed. So you can write them all down if you want. Can make a screenshot out of it. And if you look at the latency of 85 nanoseconds, that's quite high if you compare to current DDR4 standards. That would typically be in the 60s or 70s. So yes, it's slower. It needs more time to put data on the bus, but the bandwidth is usually much higher than the DDR4 can do. So this is the slower speed, so the 4800 CL40. That's the one I'm going to use. And you also have something called command rate. You can set it up to 1, 2, or 4, I believe, in DDR5. It depends on the BIOS as well. Usually the 2T command is quite normal. We can also do a 7-zip benchmark.
Yeah, sounds good.
I made a screenshot out of this one, so we can
later on we will
run
it again, but then at 6000
with the same latency setting. Yeah. Since CAS latency is a number of cycles, not in megahertz or nanoseconds. The higher the clock speed with the same latency number will mean it's a shorter timing because the cycles get shorter. For example, if you have 6000 CL40, it's the same latency as DDR3000 CL20 because the cycles get half the speed, but double the amount, will still have the same latency number.
Django is asking, my 9900K with 3733 megahertz CL90 or CL16 has a latency of 49.5 nanoseconds with 50 gigabit memory bandwidth, but this RAM is better because of the higher bandwidth, right? It depends a bit on the situation. Like certain applications are more sensitive to memory latency, so they benefit more from a lower latency. So in that situation, a DDR4 kit can, in certain situations, perform better than a DDR5 kit. But there are also other situations where memory bandwidth is a way bigger factor for the total performance. And in that situation, indeed, the DDR5 kit will be faster. So it's not. I cannot say that the DDR5 will always be better because it's really situational whether or not it will perform better or not. So Ruud, what are you benchmarking right now?
This is the 7-zip benchmark, and yeah, it's basically just a computational benchmark, but it does have a memory component in it. I mean, it responds very well to memory speeds. We used this one before, and we also used WinRAR, I think, before. WinRAR has a cleaner interface.
Data compression.
Yeah, but basically what it does is compresses a lot of files together into a zip file or a 7-zip file or whatever compression format you want. And that takes usually a lot of time from the CPU, but faster speed of memory will definitely help. Other things that also respond well is video transcoding or video encoding. There should be a slide of that in your presentation as well, of what we benchmarked before. So what we see here, especially the compression part, that's the most interesting part, is the 104.6, I would round it off, giga instructions per second. That's the capability of this CPU in combination with this memory. So if we increase the memory speed in the BIOS, then we should also get higher speeds here as well. You also want to do the game benchmark, or we save that for later?
Yeah, we'll save those for later.
Okay,
Let's first go to the 6000.
Change it in the BIOS, and I'll try to make it visible on the capture.
Yeah, if you pull out the,
yeah,
the plug
I
at
need
the
to
right
do a
time,
trick,
then
yeah. Okay. Otherwise, the main display will be the monitor, because the display port is the primary display output. The capture
Django is asking, does only the 12th gen Intel support DDR5 right now, or also 11th gen? No, it's only the 12th gen.
Yeah, only 12.
At this point. AMD already announced that they, on AM5, will also get DDR5 support. They will actually only support DDR5, whereas on 12th gen Intel, there are actually 2 memory controllers within the current generation Intel CPUs, so they can support either DDR4 or DDR5, but of course you need to get the correct motherboard for either of them. Whereas what AMD announced for their AM5 platform will always be DDR5. But 11th gen Intel is always DDR4. There is only a DDR4 memory controller in there.
Yeah. So at the moment we're in advanced BIOS mode, but there's also an easy mode of the BIOS. That's usually when you get the board from the box, it will run in this mode. On this part you will see the XMP profile 1, 2 and 3. Unfortunately it doesn't say exactly what speed it will be running when you press the 1. Maybe it will show you here. XMP profile 1 is 6040 and this voltage.
So here you can also see that if you go to profile 2 and 3, like Mike explained earlier from Kingston, that you will get lower frequencies.
Yeah, a lower voltage, and yeah, this is the same sub-timings, more or less. And with 3 you will get a bit better timing, so lower latencies, but also lower clock speeds, of course. And that's what you can try if the fastest speed is unstable for this platform. This has been pre-tested, so I'm pretty sure the 6000 will run fine.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to do, basically, if you set up your system and you don't want to set up anything special, then go into the BIOS, load defaults, press XMP profile 1, and you're good to go, at least for Kingston. I'm not 100% sure that every memory vendor will put the highest or the best spec speed of the memory in XMP profile 1. So that can be different for different memory vendors.
So best to always double check what is in the profile.
Exactly, yeah. With G.Skill we had one 5600 C36 module. That only had one XMP profile, and that was the speed advertised, so that's easy. Then you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
But I can understand Kingston's way of doing things as well.
Yeah, like for example, if you're experiencing instability, you still have other XMP profiles, whereas if you only have one profile, you will manually need to fine-tune it.
Yeah, or go back to the SPD times, and that's usually the slowest speed.
Yeah.
You can always go back to. I need to wait until my monitor also...
Django says 13th gen Intel will probably be DDR5 only then, as well as it will be a newer generation again. Maybe, maybe not. That's up to Intel. Because right now we can already see that Intel for 12th gen chose a different direction than AMD. AMD goes from one platform DDR4 to next DDR5, whereas Intel keeps a transitional period, and still remains to be seen if they continue the transitional period with their future generation, or if they do like AMD and go fully DDR5.
So basically now we're running at 3000 or close to 3000 says megahertz, and that's the 6000 megatransfers per second, and cast latency 40. So that's the speed we're running at now. So compare that to the previous setting, that was 4800 CL40. So let's see what kind of speeds we're going to get if we're running just a basic memory benchmark.
I see another question. Feith the Merchant is asking, are there any plans for MSI to make their own RAM and ITX PC case? Own RAM, no, not at this point. ITX PC case, yes, we've actually already been teasing one of those. I believe it was in our CES live stream in January. So if I'm sure you can still find it on YouTube. We've actually been showing a little bit of an upcoming case that will only support the mini ITX form factor. Samurai Warrior is asking, should I sync all CPU cores or leave it auto? Ruud, what do you recommend?
I don't understand what they mean.
Yeah, Samurai.
If you're overclocking or what?
Please elaborate on that. Edwin K is asking, are there extra heatsinks needed for the M.2 SSD and memory and chokes? For the M.2 SSD, it really depends on the SSD you're using. In general, a heatsink does help, especially if you have like very extended workloads and stress it for a long time. Then it can help that it won't throttle as fast. But this also very depends on the specific SSD you're using. There are also SSDs that you can easily run without a heatsink. So yeah, that one is hard to answer. It's a bit like with CPUs. Some CPUs are easier to cool than others, and it's the same for SSDs. Memory and chokes. Yeah, memory, it's a bit like what Mike already explained. Certain memory modules you can easily run without a heatsink, and sometimes they still have one for cosmetic purposes. Because yeah, a memory module with a heatsink generally looks much better than like the bare one with the memory chips on there. Especially if it's like one of those basic green modules, they just don't look very good. And chokes. The reason we have like our heatsinks on our current generation motherboards, they do extend over the chokes, and they also have a thermal pad in between the heatsink and the chokes. That's not specifically because the chokes produce a lot of heat, but it's because the chokes also absorb some of the heat of the power stages, and basically it gives you a bigger surface area to the heatsink when having a pad both on the power stages and the chokes. So basically it will help to dissipate the heat from the whole VRM area rather than specifically the heat generated by the chokes, because that's not that much. Most of the heat really comes from the power stages.
And the power stages put a lot of heat into the PCB, and the PCB heats up, and the best way to cool the or one of the ways to cool the PCB is put like a back plate on it. But also the chokes are close and to the hottest part on the PCB, and will absorb the heat through the heatsink on the top.
Yeah.
Since the chokes are mostly metal with some ceramics around it. So this is the speed we got on the 6000 modules, or with 6000 speeds. Oh, wrong. Sorry. Where did we get the latest? Should be this one. No, that's the wrong one. I made a screenshot earlier. Oh, here we go. I didn't make a screenshot of the 7-zip one.
I also have some results in my overview. So
yeah, okay. So slightly bigger. So the copy speed definitely got higher from 67 gigabytes per second to 82 gigabytes per second.
So on the left is the 4800
yeah, that's the
megatransfers per second,
4800.
on the right 6000.
Yeah, almost 6,000. And the timings are a little bit different, so yeah, a little bit lower latencies in the sub timings on the previous setting than with this one, but pretty close. And the latency also dropped quite some bit, so 14 nanoseconds lower, almost. So that's a good gain of performance just by setting the XMP profile. I believe that the 7-zip was 104.6.
Let me also...
I don't know if you have footage supporting that.
Yeah, I've got a comparison table here. So I'll first let you run the benchmark, and then I will show it. It also compares the testing you did
Probably
with
people
DDR4.
are looking it back now, so yeah.
See some questions in the meanwhile. Django's asking DDR4 kits or standard 2133 megahertz. Now there's DDR4 with 4800 megahertz, CL18 as well. DDR5 is standard like 4000 megahertz. How fast will DDR5 fastest kits will get? Is that 7000 or up to like 9000? It's still too early to tell. I know there are some memory kits that are already 7000, so I expect them to go even higher in the future. But yeah, it's too early to tell how far they will eventually get. We saw earlier on that the memory record for DDR4, it started at, well, I can actually pull up that slide. Let me quickly show you. Here you can, for example, see that in 2015 we were at 4351 megatransfers per second, and in 2021 it was 7,200 megatransfers per second. So you see that the increase over the years was quite a lot, and you can expect to see a similar. And this is specifically overclocking. Of course, this is different with like the actual speed on the kits. But yeah, DDR5 over time, there's no doubt that it will get faster.
You have to take into account that the usable speed of DDR4 and the CPUs that accompany the DDR4 controller tops out around 3800. So any speed above that is more like an overclocking contest, not really usable speed for programs anymore. So yes, the transfers will be higher in a program like AIDA, but it doesn't benefit the CPU that much in gaming or productivity.
I see a question from James on YouTube chat. When will we be able to boot a PC with 4 DIMMs of fast DDR5, for example, 4 times 6600 megahertz? That is really hard to say, because this is also very much dependent on the memory controller within the CPU.
On Alder Lake, I don't see that happening.
No.
So we have to wait for the next Intel or next AMD one to see what they are capable of.
Yeah. So yeah, this is impossible to answer at this point. It really it depends a lot on the what the memory controller within the CPU can do.
Yeah. So Mike from Kingston said that it's not that the memory module cannot do it. It's the controller inside the Intel CPU at the moment. So
because with 2 DIMMs, the modules can reach it. So that already proves that the modules can do it.
Capable. Yeah.
Let me see. I saw another interesting question. Nurupo guys asked on Twitch that CPU Z said that the JDEC number 8 profile has a cache latency of 42, yet you were running with a cache latency of 40 before. So you weren't running the JDEC number 8 before, but that's something else, was it?
Yeah, I was running different than JDEC 8. If we open up the HW info 64, then you'll see that there's many more speeds here.
Django has to go. Bye, Django. Thanks for joining.
There should be more here. Okay. And this is only the summary. Hang on. Don't do summary. We can get more information from the regular program instead of just the summary. Let's make this smaller. I resized the desktop so it would be better on the capture. So this is the module. There should be some timings here. It doesn't say the 24 one. Cost supported, yeah, also 22, but it's different than I expected.
Yeah, her a couple.
This is extreme profile already or not? Yeah. Okay. No, it's not where I would expect it. What we can do is generate a report from CPU-Z, and I think we should be able to get 7 more JDEC profiles out of it. Let's just save it here, it doesn't matter. Okay, this is gonna be a bit large, but memory part, there's a lot of CPU stuff in the way first. I need a scroll bar. Here we go. Here we go. So this is the current timings. Here's the memory SPD. So here you will see all 8 of the JDEC timings that are supported. So this was the speed we were running at before. So that, oh sorry, I will scroll up because Mike's head is in the way.
I can remove myself. Here.
Sorry.
Problem solved.
Oh, that's also possible, yeah. But JDEC 7 was the speed we were running because that was at 4800 megatransfers or 2400 megahertz, and gas latency 40. So all these speeds are supported, but as you can see, these are the lower frequency. So basically we could get to DDR5 2733, if I'm calculating that correctly. But I don't think anybody will prefer DDR5 2733 gas latency 22, right? I'm not even sure if the BIOS will accept speeds like that.
Yeah, I'm also not sure if it.
I haven't tried it, but yeah,
but why would you want to run it?
If you want to have absolute lowest latency numbers. Because since the clock speed drops, it also means the real latency in nanoseconds doesn't change that much or even get worse.
Before we continue, let's pick a few more winners in our giveaway. So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider or follow the direct link that our bot puts in the chat on YouTube and Twitch once every 5 minutes. If you already participated, no need to perform any more actions. But if you have participated yet, make sure to do so. And our next winners, Ruud, the honor is all yours again.
Flammy.
Congratulations. You also won a game code for Rainbow Six Extraction. And then we have
Jaffo.
Congratulations. And
She-Ku.
Yeah, she_Ku.
Ku, yeah.
Congratulations. Exactly. You also won a game code for Rainbow Six Extraction. So I'll keep an eye out on your mailbox, then we will email the code to you in the coming days with some instructions on how to redeem it. Congratulations. Senpai Kun Ayaya asked DDR6 when? No idea. We just have DDR5. It's still a bit too early. Ruud, you already mentioned latencies a bit. I got a slide here from your earlier testing that is maybe interesting to show. Because this also includes DDR4.
Yeah.
So what do we see here?
So the bottom one, I tested on a Z690 Tomahawk DDR4 motherboard with the exact same CPU. Everything the same except the memory. So basically the memory I used was a 3600 C18 kit.
But the same 12700K CPU?
Yeah, same CPU, same graphics card, SSD, power supply,
Yeah.
cooler, everything.
But the motherboard, of course, we needed to
Different
swap
motherboard,
out.
of course. This one doesn't support DDR4, and of course different BIOS because it's a different motherboard. But basically, run the same idea. So run it at SPD timing. So basically, if you don't set up anything in the BIOS, and with XMP profile, that is the advertised speed of that module. So if you're looking at the bottom two, that's the DDR4, running either in 2666, CAS latency 19, or in 3600, CAS latency 18. I think that's a quite nice spec for today's standard and still affordable module, I would guess.
But the SPD one here, 2666, this is on Alder Lake, for example, but there are also older platforms that may, for example, have 2400 as a default, or even 2133 megahertz.
Yeah, please notice that the Alder Lake memory controller, since it has the dual channel or the two sub-channel configuration, it does add extra latency to it. So if you compare this to the previous generation, like the Comet Lake and stuff, those latencies will be lower with the same memory. Also compared to AMD, for example. So they will be slightly lower. So I would guess something like the 58 nanoseconds. But since this is the same CPU to CPU comparison between DDR4 and DDR5, I think it's a fair comparison.
It's apples to apples.
Exactly, yeah.
But it also shows that in certain situations that are very latency sensitive, it is possible that a fast DDR4 kit with quite tight latencies can perform better than DDR5 in certain situations.
Yeah. And some programs will benefit more from lower latencies than with higher bandwidth. So the DDR4 setup will be faster. If you're looking at, there was an earlier question about, will I need to get DDR5 for gaming? I would say no, because most gaming is, depending. If you're running CPU-bound games, then maybe yes. But in most situations like AAA games, it's a GPU-bound situation. So it means the faster GPU, the more FPS you will get, and the CPU and the memory need to be able to keep up. But adding a faster CPU or adding more speed to your RAM will not benefit more or give you more FPS, or not a lot more at least. So in that regard, I would say no, spend more money on your GPU, and if you want to have the memory affordable, then still go with DDR4. But if you're looking at, do I want to use this kit in the next platform, or do I want to upgrade soon, then maybe DDR5 is more for you.
And also, when taking a look at the ADA scores, you also benchmark the bandwidth. Also have a nice overview for this.
I think the bandwidth, that's not only because of the speed, but also because of the configuration part. Like the dual sub-channels, it will benefit a lot. Of course, this is a pure memory benchmark, so nobody's really running AIDA every day. Or maybe me, but depending on which day. But this is a good showcase of DDR5, what it's capable of. But it doesn't necessarily translate in this kind of numbers in productivity or gaming. So this is just
raw benchmarking throughput.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And there you do see a much bigger difference than the latency, which is of course very different. Like here you see a way bigger difference than when comparing latencies. Senpai is asking, my old laptop uses DDR3. Is there an adapter to utilize DDR5? No, because you need the correct memory controller in your CPU. And CPUs with the DDR3 memory controller definitely don't have a DDR5 memory controller on board. Also, it's not just the physical differences in the slot. Also, voltages, for example, differ quite a lot. So DDR3 uses a much higher voltage than DDR5. I believe DDR3, the default was 1.5 volts. And based on the kit, if you had like an overclocking kit, you, for example, had 1.65 or anything like that. Whereas DDR5 starts at 1.1 volt for the for the 4800 megahertz, for example. And the kit we're using right now with this XMP profile is running at 1.35 volts.
Yeah.
And even older memory, so DDR2, the voltage is even higher. So that one started at 1.8 volt, and certain overclocking kits even had 2 volts.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to put 2 volts on a DDR5 module. So no, you cannot use an adapter to basically upgrade in memory generation. That's not possible.
Since the power management circuit, or PMIC, or power management
also
IC,
big difference.
is on the modules, it also means you're limited to the capabilities of that chip. So the bias cannot go over the maximum of that chip. So depending on if you're having an overclock module, you probably can get a little bit higher than if you're buying more standard memory.
Yeah. You also ran 7-zip. Let me quickly...
Yeah. No, we already finished.
Yeah.
So I believe the previous setting was 104.6, give or take. And now we're at... You haven't switched yet?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, now we're at 116.8, rounded off. So that's about 12, an improvement of 12 giga instructions per second. So that's roughly like 10% or something. That's also a very good use case of a productivity workload that will benefit from high bandwidth memory. Also compared to, for example, DDR4 and then the lower speeds, then DDR5 will definitely help. But this test also is prone to work better with lower latencies as well. So from the previous setting we had lower bandwidth and higher latency, so slower timings. And now we have higher bandwidth and better timings. So we had double improvement. So if you keep the same speed and lower the latencies, you will still have benefits in this benchmark. Other benchmarks or other workloads that will definitely benefit from higher DDR5 speeds is video encoding. So I used Handbrake with X264 and X265, and definitely DDR5 is faster than the
Let me quickly
DDR4.
show you an overview of Handbrake.
Yeah.
Here you also see it's the scaling also is quite okay here.
Yeah.
So you basically see the higher you go in frequency, the better your...
Yeah.
Even if you're using a relatively high cache latency, like for example the 4800 C40, which is a way higher latency than 3600 C18, but still in Handbrake it does perform better.
Yeah.
Nathan is saying DDR5 still not ready, at least for as far as gamers are concerned. I don't necessarily agree. It's not specifically that it's not ready. It's just in games the benefit, not in all games the benefit is that big. In some games you do see a difference and it will be faster. But there are certain workloads where you benefit more from DDR5 than gaming. But it's not specific that it's not ready. I definitely think it's ready, and it will only get faster over time.
Yeah, this is the first CPU that is capable of running DDR5, so I expect better improvements in the next generation, either from Intel or from AMD. Also higher speeds for overclocking.
Yeah. Nathan says Latencies DDR5 cannot be made up for by its throughput in games. It also depends very much on the game, how sensitive they are to latencies. So in certain games, indeed, you see a difference, and there are even examples where DDR5 can even perform slightly better or a DDR4 can perform slightly better than DDR5. But there are also examples where you see that DDR5 is definitely a little bit faster in gaming as well than DDR4.
Right, you do see like diminishing returns. Like if you go from DDR4, let's say 2800 to 3600, you'll still see quite a big jump, or 2666, that's what I was testing. But if you go beyond 36 and go to faster speeds like DDR5 and even to DDR5 6000, the added frames per second increase will get smaller and smaller even each time you will increase the memory speed and lower the latency. So then you're just benchmarking for the benchmarking sake. And so yeah, I don't think it will mean much for gaming. I mean, gaming usually have a potent CPU and spend extra money on the GPU. Or overclock your GPU. That will help. That doesn't help that much anymore. The turbos are
Senpai is saying in Twitch chat, recommend me an MSI laptop that uses DDR5 for heavy gaming. Well, I'm not a notebook expert myself. I mostly do motherboards, but next week, sneak peek, we have a live stream about notebooks. And we also have one of our notebook people right here in the studio. Jesse will join us then. So definitely make sure to join next week and ask that question to Jesse. I'm sure he will be able to answer this for you.
Yeah, we also saw with notebooks, DDR5 does help. Let me put it backwards. With DDR4 notebooks, and especially the entry-level gaming notebooks, had memory kits in them that were x16, and that means how they are how the DIMMs are configured. So it basically has only like 4 chips in them, and that will lower the speed of the DDR4. If you do that the same with the DDR5, being with 2 subchannels, it doesn't make that much of a difference because it already has those 2 subchannels to work with, and the speed decrease is not there with DDR5, and it can be there with DDR4. So with the higher end DDR4 gaming laptops, we use x8 memory, so it has 8 chips on them instead of 4, and then the problem was not seen. So if you're interested in that kind of topic, then I would recommend Jared's tech. He has multiple videos over on this topic.
Okay,
so DDR5 does, the architecture of DDR5 does help with performance and also for gaming. But for desktops, you don't see much kits of x16. So.
Well, there are also some examples of where memory speed does not make a big difference, and one of them is Cinebench, right?
Yeah, Cinebench is really, or rendering in general, or CPU rendering in general, I should say. It doesn't make a difference at all. So, yeah, these kind of differences can be seen.
It's basically all within the margin of error.
Yeah. So run it 100 times, and it will probably be average the same.
Yeah, you do see that there's like a slight increase, but this is, not noticeable difference.
No, the percentages are so small, you cannot really see that as a measurable difference.
No.
And the same goes for Blender, for example. That's also, if you use the CPU rendering. So we can demonstrate a game that benefits a little bit. Shall we do that?
Yeah, sure.
So first we're gonna do the fast one and then the slow one, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We'll see how much of a hit we get when going from 6,000 mega transfers per second to 4,800.
On this system we're still like F121, 2021 on it, so
2022 is not out yet, right?
No.
I think soon. I think it's usually in the summer somewhere, right?
Usually it's later in the season. Maybe they're just waiting for the silly season to end in the real Formula 1 season and then say, okay, now we can do it. Let's first show you the settings. It's running at full HD mode, so nothing special. The lower the settings you will get, the more the CPU and the memory will be a factor in the performance. So
the bigger difference you will also see between higher speed memory and lower speed memory.
That's what I was referring to when you talk about CPU bound and GPU bound. And the lower the settings, I could even lower the settings more, but then it might be ridiculous. And the detail preset is medium, so also quite low for a GPU of this standard. I'll just use the default settings. And speed will be good. At least there was one hiccup with this game. Sometimes it defaults back to like a frame cap of 120, but not sure what it's going to do now. Okay, now it's in the 370, so yeah, should be good.
So just to make clear, this is at 6,000 megatransfer per second.
Yeah, this
is a high frequency DDR5. Yeah.
I didn't run this game on the DDR4 setup, so I don't have comparisons with that setup.
But later on we can compare to 4800 megatransfer per second.
Yeah, yeah.
Astrid Rockman says 120, good grief. Yeah, it's a weird bug, it seems like. Because it also happened both on high and low speeds, it all of a sudden just dropped to a constant 120 FPS.
I'm running a full HD 240 display on it. So maybe it has something to do with the, the VSync is definitely off, but maybe the FreeSync part will take play or something like that. And doesn't go higher than half the maximum frequency of the monitor.
And it was also out of the blue. Like one run it would run fine, and the other run it was all of a sudden locked at 120 FPS.
Sorry.
As Rockman says, 420 FPS is so good. Yeah, this is
this is
higher than
settings,
a monitor can display. And this is a 240 Hz, so it's a high refresh rate monitor for sure. But even our 360 Hz monitor cannot keep up with these frame rates.
Yeah. This is a benchmark for benchmarking's sake, not for gameplay. I mean, for this game you don't need 400 FPS. I don't think it will make you drive any better. So we got an average of 422 and a minimum of 362. Okay, so let's remember the average one, the 422.
422. Okay, got it.
Okay, make a screenshot. Yeah, don't forget. Let's go into the BIOS and set the 4800 again. Should I show the BIOS or?
Yeah, I think you've already shown it, so just
okay, then we'll do the quick way.
Just swap the memory speed and
yeah, okay. And basically I'll just turn off the XMP. That's what I do.
Yeah. It's clicking one button, that's the only change.
Yeah.
So from enabled to disabled. And then we'll go back to the JDEC profile. So it will run at 4800 megahertz CL40. So the same cache latency, but lower frequency. Hello FGX Raven, welcome to the stream. So in the meanwhile, let's quickly take a look at some other results of earlier testing you did, because you've also been testing CSGO on both DDR4 and DDR5.
Yeah, usually the CSGO responds very well to CPU performance. So the higher CPU you put in your system, usually also the higher the FPS. But it seems to level off now. The 12700K seems to be at almost the same speed as the 12900K. So there's no reason for this game to go that high CPU.
Yeah, so there's no significant difference, and it's all so close to each other that it's basically within the margin of error as well, pretty much.
And it's very high FPS gaming, so yeah. Normally the differences are quite big, but yeah, in this case it's not. So we have another game. I'm not sure if you put it in, but
Siege?
Yeah, the Rainbow Six Siege.
Yes, I do. So here you see a similar pattern.
Yeah. Actually, there's quite some differences here, and it looks like this one, yeah, I would say it responds to latency more than bandwidth.
So that's where you see when you don't benefit from DDR5.
Yeah.
At this point, at least.
Not sure why I'm not getting into the BIOS. Is that because of the capture card attached?
Let me go to the capture.
Ah,
yes,
yeah,
there we are.
Now, oh, here we are. I'm going to show you anyway, because I thought I'm not getting any screen here. So I just disabled the XMP profile and I save it.
It took the capture card as primary screen.
Yeah, because we unplugged the display port. So it switched, okay. Oh, that's fine, yeah. You can go back to the PPT then.
Boskind is saying, any chance we get you guys going to test live on CSGO? No, it's we do have another game for you to show later on, but not CSGO. That's why we show you the graph, because we did some earlier testing, so we can show you some different titles and how they respond. But we don't have the time to show all of them, unfortunately. But yeah, CSGO and Rainbow Six Siege, they don't really benefit directly from DDR5.
They benefit from CPU speed up to a certain point, also depending on the settings, of course. And also, yeah, a 3070 Ti is just as fast as a 3090 Ti. The GPU is definitely not a factor in this one. For Rainbow Six Siege, the GPU does play a bigger role than for CSGO. That's for sure.
Yeah, CSGO is an extreme example of a CPU-bound game.
Yeah.
Also because it's quite old already, and even back in the day when it was launched, I believe 2011, 2012 maybe. I think it's probably 12, over 10 years old, right?
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
And even when it was launched back then, it was already an esports title, and it was not very heavy for those days even. And then we're talking 10 years back. So for today's hardware, CSGO is peanuts. You can easily play this on your iGPU as well, even if you have like a very simple one. It's a very light game.
Okay, so we're back at almost to 2400 or 4800 megatransfers per second, gas latency 40. Let's fire up the Formula 1.
So on 6000 it was 422 FPS on average.
22, yeah. Why is it not connecting?
Did you unplug the internet?
No, it's still connected.
Is Steam down?
Steam down? Nah.
Otherwise we can start in offline mode, I think.
Steam is up, so...
That worked.
I don't know. Yeah, there we go.
Boskin says, and great entertainment if we could get to see you guys play. The players make the game. For CSGO, we're not the biggest talents. Then we would have to ask Peter. He plays CSGO. And Ja, our former colleague, unfortunately, he left MSI recently, but he was also quite an active CSGO player.
Okay, same settings, different RAM speed.
I hope we don't have the 120 bug.
No, it's not in the 120s. Lucky. It's in the 3s something.
Yeah, petrol station news indeed, SD Rockman. If you open the browser.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that, Bing News or something?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the gas prices are quite a topic nowadays. So you can already see that it's a bit lower, the frame rates. Because the average was 422.
I think it's still playable.
You think?
Yeah.
Only for 406 FPS?
I think, yeah. And if you're running benchmarks with this high FPS, usually you need to run them multiple times and then take an average to have,
to have a good result.
Yeah, good differences. Yeah. Actually, should run it 5 times, then skip the best and the worst time, and then average the middle 3. Takes too much time. Nobody's going to do that.
No.
Maybe only hardware and bugs do that.
Yeah, we see some spikes over 422 now, but the average will definitely not reach 422.
Yeah, I will trust the computer on the calculations of the FPS.
Yeah.
I think that's safer than us just eyeballing the FPS live. 405. That's not bad.
So 405 and a 6,000 megatransfers per second was 422.
So only 17. Oh, so in previous testing, this one was the gap
Bigger.
was a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. If you have this kind of high FPS result, then usually you need to run multiple times and average it. And then
So you do see a bit of difference between the different memory speeds, but
Yeah.
by no means it becomes unplayable at
No,
only
no.
4,800 megatransfers per second.
No.
You also tested Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a good example of a game that responds well to memory speed, but only up to a certain point. So if you go from 2666 DDR4 to 3600, the gap is quite big, and it does increase to a certain point that you think, okay, yeah, this is measurable, but adding more frequency or DDR5 to it, it doesn't help you anymore.
So at a certain point you reach the ceiling.
Yeah.
And like if we compare the top 3, so DDR5 6000, 4800, but also DDR4 3600 C18, they're all within margin of error.
Yeah. Of course, if you go 1440p or 4K, that might still show some differences. This is also quite older title, but it used to respond well to memory speed and also CPU speed. So that's why I included it. But you will see a ceiling here, yeah.
And we have another game to show, right?
Yeah. We can show you another one.
So now let's first test it at 4800 because we're still at that setting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we will go back to the BIOS, switch to 6000 and test it again.
Yeah, Watch Dogs Legion is also the one that responds well to memory, but with the Alder Lake CPU, yeah. Oh, that's right, yeah. It's a Ubisoft title. You need to click at least 3 times to accept.
Are you sure you want to play this game? Yes.
Yeah.
Are you really, really sure?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to allow this game to make changes? Yes. Do you want? Again.
And later on for this one, we will also show you a comparison table because Ruud also tested this on the DDR4 system. So then you can also compare between DDR4 and DDR5. Hello, Thai Digital. Welcome to the stream. We're talking about DDR5 today. And currently we're showing some differences between lower frequency DDR5, higher frequency DDR5, and also making comparison with DDR4 in certain situations. To show you when it makes a difference and certain situations where it doesn't make any difference at all. SGT Sixpacks asking, how much is DDR5 versus DDR4? You mean in performance, in
Money.
price? In
Price, I guess.
I think right now it's still close to double, I think, right?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
It did come down a little bit, so maybe a little bit less.
Oh. We're gonna run 1080p settings with very high graphics quality. That's not the highest, but it's the second highest. And then just run the benchmark.
And of course, the price difference also depends on what kind of modules they are.
Yeah.
If you have very high-end DDR4 modules and very entry-level DDR5, then the gap will be smaller.
Yeah.
Then when you're comparing more affordable DDR4 with the highest end DDR5, then the gap will be bigger, of course.
Yeah.
But prices did come down quite a bit in the past couple of months.
I think the DDR4, the good speeds like the 3600 and the 3738 came down quite a bit, and that makes it really affordable for most people with a high-end CPU. So yeah, that's challenging for the DDR5 since it's very new and it will have a price premium in the beginning. So
it was like that with DDR4 as well. Like a couple of years ago, DDR4 3600 was still very expensive.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, I would say 3600 is the sweet spot between price and performance.
Yeah.
But it was not at all like that in the past.
No. A long time ago, not so long ago, 3000 was the sweet spot, and that has already shifted to 3600 now. So.
Yeah. I'm curious asking, Mike or Ruud, who's the better gamer?
Mike.
Depends on which game as well, maybe.
No, it doesn't.
No, in general?
Maybe a card game. I don't know. Maybe darts. I don't know.
I think after a couple of beers I can do that.
Okay, so we got 131 FPS and 104 1% lows.
Okay.
Make a screenshot.
So I'm going to remember the 131.
131. Okay, let's keep
average
that one.
FPS.
Yeah. Okay.
Ben says hello from Sweden. Hello back from the Netherlands, Ben.
Okay, let's go back to the BIOS and are we at 6,000 now, or no? We are at 48.
No, we were at 4,800.
Yeah. Okay.
So now we're switching XMP on.
Okay. 31. 131.
Yeah, 131.
131.
Average
okay.
FPS.
Remember that.
Let's see if the capture card is still the primary monitor, if we can see the BIOS.
Oh yeah, right. I do see a cursor here. Does that mean we're going to see it here or there? Oh, it's here.
It's
okay.
on your screen.
Yeah.
Heatlord is also saying hi from Sweden. We only have Swedish visitors today.
Did we advertise in Sweden with the live stream link?
Ruud, kan ni prata svenska?
Nej.
Okay, then we keep it to English.
Absolut.
Absolut inte. So you're in the BIOS now? We cannot see
No, already saved and exit. So
okay, you're booting up.
To get back into Windows. Should be there right about now, I would say.
Heatlord says, jag pratar svenska. Jag kan också tala lite svenska. Jag var utbytesstudent i Västerås. Men det är långt sedan. I was telling that I was an exchange student in Sweden, but it's been a while ago. It's like
you lived in Sweden for a while.
Yeah, it's 2009, 2010, that area.
Okay.
But I remembered a little bit of Swedish. England says, I'm surprised by how good it is. Thank you, appreciate it. I try my best. So now we're at 6,000 mega transfer per second.
Yeah. Double check.
Yeah, always double check.
This time use CPU-Z. Yeah, I use both programs. So.
Guru says, just wanted to say I have two Optics G at 242 screens and I love them. I'm glad you like them.
Which one? Watch Dogs Legion?
Yes.
Okay. 131. Okay.
Yeah, 131 FPS on average. So we should be able to beat that with the current memory settings.
Yeah, in previous testing, it showed a difference, yeah.
You didn't have to click yes 5 times this time?
No, this time, yeah. Maybe I remember from last time.
Simi86 asking, wasn't it 141? I think it was 131. But
I have
Ruud
a
has a
screenshot.
screenshot,
I have
so
a
we can check
screenshot,
later
yeah.
on. We can check. So settings will remain all the same. So it was very high, I believe, right?
This one was very high or high? No, very high, yeah.
Yeah, I think very high, 1080p.
The highest one is ultra, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, second highest, yeah. Okay.
Yes, connected.
All right. No, I click this one. Okay. Okay, quality very high, benchmark. Yes.
Let's see what the difference is. I have an ID because I have your previous testing right in front of me here on the side.
Oh, yeah.
So I know what to expect.
Okay. Actually, this was also one of the games that responded well to the earlier DDR5 testing.
I'm not going to spoil anything. I'll show later. Because I also have the DDR4 tests in there.
Yeah, but probably you'll see more difference with DDR4 low speed to high speed than from DDR4 to DDR5, I think.
Some gardening. Ghost General is asking, will you guys be releasing more cases this year? Yes, we will.
Okay.
I think in a few months' time I will show you one of our new cases in the live stream, and I will also do a live build with it. I won't spoil too much, but yes, we're definitely working on new cases, and in the coming months you will see more on this live stream.
136.
So we even increased a little bit.
5 FPS.
Because I have the overview right here from your earlier testing, and of course it differs a bit from run to run. But yeah, here also the average FPS was the same between DDR5 4800 and 6000. So now one was slightly higher than the other, all within margin of error.
Yeah.
But you do see a bit of a difference between DDR4, especially the lower frequency DDR4 and DDR5.
Okay, so I didn't remember the gap between the 3600 and the 4800 was this big. Yeah.
So this is a game that does seem to respond well to DDR5, but when going to faster DDR5, there's not as much of a difference anymore.
Only the 1% lows goes up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's not a jump that we saw on F1 2021, for example.
Yeah.
Because that really increased with the faster memory. Watch Dogs Legion doesn't. And then we have one more that you tested, Far Cry 6. So here you also see quite a big jump from 2666 towards DDR4 3600. But after that, it's all quite close to each other. This one also seems a little bit more sensitive to latency, maybe, because you see a slight decrease of performance
DDR4,
with 4800 C40, and you see it increasing a little bit further even with 6000 C40.
Yeah.
So in this game, you do see a bit of a difference when you're using either low frequency DDR5 or high frequency DDR5.
Yeah.
Then we have one more thing we would like to show you, and that's what really gives you more FPS. RGB lighting.
RGB lighting, yeah. Sorry.
All of a sudden Ruud wakes up, oh, RGB.
Oh, RGB, yeah, right. So this is we have a beta version of our MSI Center installed.
Because these are still very new memory modules, and we're still working on the support within our MSI Center. So we're using an early version today.
Yeah, so also an early version of our feature called Mystic Light. That's the program, or that's the module inside MSI Center that controls the RGB of all kinds of stuff. So as you can see here, the motherboard, the graphics card, the memory, the keyboard, the mouse, and the cooling, or the fans on the cooling, are controlled here. And the LCD
fans have RGB, you cannot see it right now, but here you can.
Yeah, and of course there's also green in it, and then it looks like transparent. So
yeah, it's because of the green screen chroma key.
They're at the moment at rainbow LED style or effect. So this is the setting. I configured them individually. The motherboard is set to Meteor, but the LEDs are not that bright, so it's a bit hard to see with the lighting going on here.
Well, we have a lot of studio lights in here.
Yeah, exactly. And the graphics card, I've also set it to Meteor and then to rainbow color. It doesn't show actively. But, and the memory part, the animation is not ready. It's not done yet. So it doesn't show the effect on the monitor.
On the module.
But it does show the effect on the module itself. So if I go raindrop, it should change a little bit. I need to go to...
Yes, let me see if we can connect to your mobile camera.
At the moment they're not synced, but that might be the effect. So rainbow is this one.
I think it is the effect, because raindrops are never in sync.
Yeah, I think so. But there are some, this is light speed.
Yeah, now they are.
But you can also do rainbow colors with light speed. I think it changes every run, yeah. And yeah, breathing is the regular one, right? There's all kinds of effects. The one I had was, of course, steady is just on. Dynamic, I have no idea. Spectrum. I think it just cycles through the colors, right?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Raindrop, I'm going to try again and see if they are synced now. No, they seem to change.
I think it's part of the effect, because sometimes you see one go twice until the other goes again.
And this is wind. Oh, that's the one I had on, yeah.
This one's pretty cool.
Yeah. Voltage. Not sure what to expect there. Oh, that's a bit of a weird one.
It's an intense one.
Yeah, my phone doesn't really capture that very well, but...
Let's try if we can see it in the main cam better, maybe. It's also a bit hard to see.
Yeah, the effect is quite fast, and it changes different colors.
Very quickly, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe also have like a warning for people who are susceptible. This is called slide. It looks a bit similar to the other one. Firework. Isn't that fireworks? I think. Okay. I'll just select the red. And prism. Prism. Also quite similarly. Those are the effects that are in our Mystic Light option. Mike from Kingston also said you can create your own effects or animations in their own software. I also installed that here. I can show you. Alien
Hunter is asking, how long has MSI been working together with Kingston? Ooh, that's a good
Ooh.
question for quite a while already.
Yeah, I remember we did a co-op with them on an event, and that was in 2004 or something. Yeah, that's a
So
long
that's
time
already
ago.
18 years for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe
I
even
believe so.
longer.
Sorry?
And maybe even longer than
Yeah,
that.
maybe even longer. It could also be earlier, but I think around that time frame. Yeah. So this is the program from Kingston, Fury Control, or Fury CTRL.
Like on the keyboard control.
Yeah. So this is the logo. Of course, you can do the LEDs. And you can also dim them a little bit.
If you think they're, like for example, if your PC is on your desk and if you think they're too bright.
This one's called Rain, and we had raindrops or something, so it's not really 100% the same. Dynamic. Oh, I think dynamic is the one you can set up yourself. So there's a color sequence.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can increase the speed, or yeah. But is that? Oh, that's the color sequence. You can also set independent LEDs he was talking about.
Yeah, I think there should be an option for that somewhere, but I don't know where.
I think if you do.
Here is the slide. And maybe it shows here.
If I do static.
There is an option here. So you can, per module, and then maybe even per
it depends
LED.
on the on the effect you select. Can you go back to the capture?
Yes.
So if you do breathe, then I can, for example, do different colors for each LED or something. Oh. Yeah, it does work, yeah.
Can you show it with your camera?
Yeah. I made it very ugly now, but...
You're not very artistic with memory RGB?
No, maybe I can do the brightness a little bit higher.
Yeah, this one can use a little fine-tuning, dude.
Yeah, it's hard to see the individual LEDs.
Yeah, the camera
to capture
has
it
a
a
hard
little
time
bit
with
better.
this. Yeah, that's a bit
I think it
better.
shows blue,
Yeah, you can see
pink,
blue, magenta, yellow.
orange or yellow, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks cool.
And you can do it for all the LEDs.
So yeah, and you can also do random color. Oh, that's really funky. You can see a little bit, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
But you have lots, you have individual control. You can set it up all the way you like. That's, the program looks good. Looks very intuitive. Good interface. Not
And you
sure
can
what the
also
settings-
sync the RGB up with all the other components with a Mystic Light.
And you can also set
profiles,
up profiles, so you can save
That's
it.
cool.
Good. I think you can.
Let's take a
maybe
look.
close the Fury one. Maybe it will. If you go with the Mystic Light, you can sync them all and then choose one style. Maybe do color shift or something. Then it should be showing something similar. Hang on.
Are we stuck?
Well, I think my phone needs to reconnect.
We were looking at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like we're back. There we go. So now everything is synced in green.
Yeah, I don't have the fans in the front, but yeah, I can
I can
capture
show
that
them up
part.
here. So right now they're invisible because they're green.
Oh, they're green. Yeah, at the moment they're green. Let's choose another effect. I have no idea what lapped means. It crapped out again. Oh, there it is.
Ah, there it is. Yeah, video connection is not entirely stable, but
No, it looks like a Wi-Fi issue or something.
Ah.
Or is it because it... Do we have other effects that are cool? Ah, we can also do CPU temperature. Oh, it's all nice and cool, I guess.
oh, we're
Oh,
stuck.
no. All in the greens.
We're stuck.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Let
My
me
hand's not
reconnect.
there.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. So if I run maybe a AIDA stress test, then the temperatures should rise. Stability test.
So this will change the color based on the CPU temperature.
Yeah.
We can see the CPU temperature in the in the liquid cooler.
Yeah, wait, maybe I can do it like this. Sorry. There's a 52 there. Cooler's too good.
It's still too cold.
It hangs up again. Not really stable. It's still at 53.
Mobile let me see if we can go. Yeah, you
Maybe
cannot really
stress
see the colors
the
here.
FPU, then AVX will AVX load will.
Our camera is stuck. I cannot reconnect to your phone right now.
No?
No. Maybe you need to kill the app.
Okay. Yeah, try again.
No, still refuses.
Why? Hang on.
That's strange. Our mobile cam just died on us, chat.
I think the Wi-Fi is having issues.
Yeah, could be as well indeed.
It
But it
has
looks like it's still green when I'm
but
looking
it
right here.
says it has an exclamation point there, so I'm not sure if this is really stable.
Did you kill the app?
Yeah,
Hmm.
but it looks like it's
Maybe your phone automatically switched network. That can happen.
restart. It's at 54 again.
Okay. No, still cannot connect. But I think the CPU is still too cold because it's still green, right?
Yeah, it's at 29 degrees, but oh, now it's heating up. It's already
Oh
blue.
yeah, we can already see it. It's a bit small here.
Going purple.
Yeah, it's going purple now. And all the components change color now. So graphics card, the liquid cooler, even the dragon on the mouse, right? Is synced as well, I think.
Yeah, the mouse as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the keyboard.
I think the colors in our program are not really chosen that well. Can you go back to the capture?
Yes. There we go.
I think this one should have been orange, at least for this part of the world, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's changing orange. Yeah, you can try to reconnect if you want, but not sure if it will work. No,
No, it's still
there's
refused.
no use. But the fans are orange as well, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's on the camera.
Yeah.
It's slightly
And
hard to see.
temperature on the display here says 74, 75.
But, okay.
And that's with AVX2 load on it.
Yeah, so here you can manually set the colors.
Yeah, you can change the colors for cool and middle and hot, and you can also set the temperature to higher or lower. Except for the below 50, it will be greenish, or at least the color you choose, I guess. Well, that's kind of cool.
And of course, way higher frame rates now with all that RGB. So shall we pick our last winners for today?
Yeah, I think that's all we have to show on the system today.
So next week, Jesse will join us, and he knows a lot about our notebooks. So for the people that were asking some notebook questions in the chat, save them for next week. I'm sure Jesse will be able to go deeper into that. We're also going to show you a cool Rainbow 6 extraction notebook. So I'm pretty sure that if you didn't win a code today, that we will have some more codes for next week as well. But we do have 4 more winners before we end the stream. So the honor is all Ruud's again.
Okay, the first one is E-King.
E-King, congratulations.
And the second one is Thor.
Thor, also congratulations.
And Red Mage NW.
Yeah, redmage_NW, congratulations.
And Godly.
And Godly, also congratulations. You all won a game code for Rainbow 6 Extraction. To all winners, please keep an eye on your mailbox, then we'll email the codes to you in the coming days with some instructions on how to redeem it. If you're curious about our very cool Rainbow 6 Extraction notebook, or if you have any other questions about notebooks, make sure to tune in again next week. Same place, same time. For now, thank you for joining, everyone. We're heading out, and goodbye. See you next week, hopefully.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.